My name is Zara, and I am 35 years old. Tonight, my family banned me from their New Year Eve party because they said I would make the guests uncomfortable. I stood outside their mansion in the freezing rain, reading the text message from my mother over and over again. Do not come inside, Zara. You do not fit the aesthetic tonight. So I turned around and spent the night alone in my apartment, eating instant noodles while they drank champagne. But at exactly 12 midnight, my brother Darius called me. His voice was trembling so hard I could barely understand him. What did you do, Zara? Dad just saw the news, and he is clutching his chest. He is not breathing right. Before I tell you how I went from the family disgrace to the person owning their mortgage in a single night, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to hide your success just to survive your toxic family. It was 8 o'clock on New Year Eve, and the wind in Buckhead, Atlanta cut through my coat like a knife. I stood on the front porch of the house I grew up in, staring at the heavy oak door. I could hear the muffled sounds of jazz music and laughter coming from inside. It sounded warm. It sounded expensive. It sounded like a world I had been exiled from 7 years ago. My hands were numb, not just from the cold, but from the grip I had on the bottle of wine I was holding. It was a Chateau Margaux from 1982. It was worth $3,000, but the label was torn and stained with dust from the cellar. To the untrained eye, it looked like something I had picked up at a gas station for $10. That was the point. To them, I was damaged goods, just like the bottle. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. I was not there to stay. I just wanted to drop off the gift and maybe just for a second see my father. The door swung open and warm golden light spilled out onto the snowy porch. There stood Darius, my older brother, the golden child. He was wearing a midnight blue velvet tuxedo that fit him perfectly. He held a crystal tumbler of scotch in one hand, and he looked like he had just stepped out of a magazine for Atlanta Black Elite. He did not step back to let me in. He filled the doorway like a bouncer at an exclusive club. He looked me up and down, taking in my worn wool coat and my simple boots. His lip curled in that familiar expression of disgust I had known since we were children. "What are you doing here, Zara? I thought Mom texted you." I held up the wine bottle, my hand trembling slightly. "I just wanted to drop this off, Darius. A peace offering for the new year." "Is Dad around?" Darius laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound that seemed to freeze the air between us. He stepped out onto the porch, closing the door slightly behind him to keep the cold air from entering the party. He did not want to chill the guests, but he did not mind freezing me. "You drove all the way here for this." He gestured vaguely at me and the bottle. "Look at that car, Zara." He pointed past me to the driveway where my 2015 Honda Civic was parked. It was a reliable car, but it had a dent in the rear bumper, and the paint was fading. Compared to the lineup of Mercedes and Range Rovers in the driveway, it looked like a stain on a silk sheet. "It is dripping oil on the pavers, Zara." Darius hissed, his voice low so the guests inside would not hear. "We have Senator Williams coming tonight. We have the mayor stopping by after the countdown. Do you know what it looks like to have that piece of junk sitting next to my Porsche? It brings down the property value just by being here. Move it. Park it across the street. Better yet, park it in the next neighborhood, and walk if you insist on being here." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. It was not shame anymore. It used to be shame, but tonight it was a cold, hard anger. "I parked where there was space, Darius. I am not staying. I just wanted to give this to Dad." I tried to step around him, but he blocked my path with his arm. The scotch in his glass sloshed dangerously close to the rim. "Do not push me, Zara. You know the rules. You do not just show up unannounced looking like you just came from a shift at the warehouse. It is embarrassing. Tiffany is inside and she is already stressed enough with the pregnancy." Tiffany, my sister-in-law, the woman who had mastered the art of the passive-aggressive insult. She was white and came from old Southern money, and she had never missed an opportunity to remind me that I was too loud, too aggressive, or simply too much. I opened my mouth to speak, but a voice floated out from the parlor inside. It was my mother, Beatrice. Darius, who was at the door. Her voice was melodic, charming, the perfect hostess voice she reserved for company. But then it sharpened. "Please tell me it is not Zara." I flinched. Even after 35 years, her voice still had the power to make me feel like a disappointing little girl with scraped knees. "She is here, Mom," Darius called back over his shoulder, rolling his eyes at me. "She brought some wine." There was a pause, and then my mother's voice came closer. I could imagine her walking toward the foyer, her silk gown rustling, her pearls clicking. "Tiffany is having a very sensitive day," my mother called out, not bothering to come to the door herself. "Her morning sickness is back with a vengeance. She says the scent of struggle on your sister makes her nauseous. Just take the gift and send her away, Darius. We cannot have that negative energy in here tonight. Not with the senator arriving any minute." The scent of struggle. That was a new one even for Beatrice. I looked down at my coat. It was clean. It was high-quality wool. But to them, anything that did not scream designer label was a sign of failure. They saw my simple life as a rejection of everything they stood for. They thought I was poor because I was stupid. They thought I was struggling because I lacked ambition. They had no idea that I had spent the last 7 years building a financial technology empire from my laptop. They had no idea that the struggle scent was actually the smell of $1.2 billion in equity waiting to be liquidated. Darius turned back to me, a smug grin plastered on his face. "You heard, Mom. Tiffany needs a stress-free environment. And frankly, so do I. I am about to close the biggest deal of my career tonight. I need to be focused. I cannot have you moping around in your Goodwill clothes, asking people for handouts, or making everyone feel guilty because you could not hack it in medical school." I tightened my grip on the wine bottle. "I did not drop out because I could not hack it, Darius. I dropped out because you and Mom drained my tuition fund to pay for your wedding, remember?" Darius' face darkened, his eyes narrowed into slits. "Do not rewrite history, Zara. You quit. You were weak, and we did what we had to do to maintain the family image. My wedding was the social event of the decade. It opened doors for this family that you could not even dream of walking through. And what have you done since then? Nothing. You live in that shoebox apartment downtown. You drive a dented car. You are 35 years old and you have nothing to show for it." He snatched the bottle from my hand. I gripped it tight for a split second, tempted to pull it back, but I let go. He held it up to the porch light, inspecting it with a sneer. He looked at the torn label and the dust on the glass. "Chateau what?" he scoffed. "This looks like something you dug out of a bargain bin at a liquidation sale. Jesus, Zara. If you are going to bring a gift, at least bring something drinkable." "It is a good year," I said, my voice steady. "It needs to breathe." Darius laughed, shaking his head. He looked at me with pure pity. Pity that felt like acid. "Yeah, I bet it does. Well, I guess the kitchen staff can use it for cooking sauce. It is certainly not going in the crystal stemware. We are serving Dom Perignon tonight, Zara. Real champagne for real successes." He made a shooing motion with his hand as if I were a stray dog he had caught digging in the trash. "Go home, Zara. Go back to your little apartment and watch the ball drop on your little TV. Do us a favor and do not come back until you are at least driving a car from this decade. And do not text Mom tonight. She wants to focus on the guests." The heavy oak door slammed in my face. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the cold night air. The lock clicked decisively. I stood there for a moment, staring at the wood grain. I could hear the jazz music starting up again inside. I could hear laughter. I could hear Darius' voice booming, greeting someone else, probably the senator. They were warm. They were safe. They were surrounded by the finest things money could buy. They were toasting to a year of prosperity. My prosperity. I did not cry. I wanted to. The old Zara, the one who begged for their approval, would have been sobbing by now. She would have been banging on the door, begging them to let her in, promising to sit in the corner and be quiet, just to be part of the family. But that Zara died 7 years ago. She died the day she walked out of the dean office at medical school, having learned that her tuition check had bounced because her father had transferred the funds to a wedding planner. I turned around and walked back down the long, winding driveway. The snow was falling harder now, covering my windshield in a sheet of white. My boots crunched on the gravel. I reached my car and brushed the snow off the glass with my gloved hand. I got into the driver's seat and the engine sputtered before turning on. It really was a terrible car for a billionaire, but it was the car that had carried me to every investor meeting, every late-night coding session, every pitch that had been rejected before the one that said yes. I sat in the dark car, letting the heater warm up my frozen fingers. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was not a text from my mother apologizing. It was not a text from my father asking me to come back. It was a secure message from Mr. Sterling, my attorney. The notification lit up the dark car, casting a blue glow on my face. I picked it up and unlocked the screen. The message was short, professional, and life-changing. The merger is finalized, Ms. Vance. The wire transfer has cleared. The embargo lifts at midnight. As of 12 a.m. tonight, the deed to 4500 Tuxedo Road will transfer to your holding company. You now own the property. Happy New Year, Billionaire. 4500 Tuxedo Road. The house I was parked in front of. The house my parents lived in. The house Darius bragged about inheriting one day. I looked back at the mansion one last time. The lights were blazing from every window. Shadows danced across the curtains. They were celebrating. They were eating caviar and drinking champagne and laughing at the daughter they had turned away. They had exactly 4 hours left. I put the car in gear and drove away. As I merged onto the highway heading back toward the city, I felt a strange sense of calm. For years they had told me I was nothing. For years they had told me I was broken. Tonight I was going to show them exactly what broken looked like. I checked the time on the dashboard. 8:30 p.m. The countdown had begun. I drove straight to my apartment complex. It was a brick building on the edge of the city, the kind of place with flickering hallway lights and neighbors who argued too loudly. This was the stage I had set. For 7 years, I had maintained this illusion. I lived here not because I had to, but because it was the perfect camouflage. No one asks a woman living in a walk-up apartment for money. No one suspects that the woman washing her own clothes at the laundromat down the street is negotiating 9-figure deals on her phone while waiting for the spin cycle. I parked the Honda and walked up the 3 flights of stairs. Inside my apartment was sparse. A second-hand couch, a small table, a laptop. But there was one thing that did not fit. On the wall, I had mounted a row of high-definition monitors. They were currently black. I sat down at the desk and typed in a password. The screens flickered to life. Screen 1 showed the feed from the hidden camera I had installed in my parents' living room 3 years ago. I had told them it was a smart home security system, a gift to keep them safe. They never questioned why I insisted on setting it up myself. They just assumed it was the cheap brand. I watched them now. The party was in full swing. My father, Harold, was standing by the fireplace, holding a glass of amber liquid. He was talking to a man I recognized as a local developer. My son, Darius, is a genius. I could hear my father's voice clearly through the speakers. He runs the most successful fund in the city. Returns are through the roof. We are looking at expanding to Europe next year. I shook my head. Darius did not run a fund. He ran a glorified Ponzi scheme. I knew this because I had hired a forensic accountant 6 months ago to look into why my parents were suddenly asking me for small loans again. The report was damning. Darius was paying old investors with new investors' money. He was months away from collapse. And my father, the esteemed Reverend Harold Vance, was unknowingly recruiting his own church members to invest in this sinking ship. Screen 2 showed the dining room. My mother, Beatrice, was holding court with a group of women from the church. She was wearing a diamond necklace that I knew for a fact was cubic zirconia because she had sold the real one 2 years ago to cover Darius' gambling debts. It is such a shame about Zara, my mother was saying, her voice lowered to a theatrical whisper. We tried everything. Therapy, rehab. She just refuses to get her life together. We have to love her from a distance now, for our own safety. I clenched my jaw. Safety. I had never raised a hand to them. I had never raised my voice until tonight. I had worked 2 jobs to pay off the credit cards they opened in my name when I turned 18. I was the one who needed safety from them. Screen 3 showed Tiffany, my sister-in-law. She was sitting in the kitchen away from the main party with 2 of her friends. She was eating a plate of deviled eggs and laughing. God, did you smell her? Tiffany said, wiping her mouth. She smells like old fryer grease and desperation. I thought she was going to beg for leftovers. I told Darius if she comes in, I am leaving. I do not want my baby absorbing that kind of failure through the womb. Her friends laughed. One of them touched Tiffany's stomach. You are a saint for dealing with that family drama, Tiff. I leaned back in my chair. Saint. Tiffany was the one who had convinced Darius to demand I sign over my share of our grandmother inheritance. She was the one who whispered in my mother's ear that I was jealous of her pregnancy. I looked at the clock. 9:15. My phone rang. It was Darius. I stared at the screen. Why was he calling me? He just kicked me out. I answered and put it on speaker. What? I said. Send me $500. Darius said. No hello, no apology, just a demand. Why? I asked. I need to tip the caterers and I left my wallet in the office. Just sell it to me. I will pay you back next week. You kicked me out, Darius. You insulted me. And now you want my money. Do not be petty, Zara. It is $500. You probably have that stashed under your mattress. Look, Mom is really stressed. If the caterers leave early because they are not tipped, it will ruin the night. Do it for Mom. Or do you want to ruin New Year Eve for everyone? The audacity was breathtaking. Even now, even after slamming the door in my face, he still felt entitled to what little he thought I had. I do not have it, Darius, I said. Rent is due tomorrow. You are so useless, he spat. I do not know why I even bothered calling. Go back to eating your noodles. He hung up. I looked at the bowl of noodles sitting on my desk. It was true I was eating noodles, but they were made with white truffle oil and gold leaf imported from Italy. I took a bite. They were delicious. I switched tabs on my computer. I opened my email. There was a message from the private investigator I had hired to track Darius' financial movements. Subject: urgent update. I opened the attachment. It was a scanned document. A subpoena. The Securities and Exchange Commission was investigating Darius' firm. The subpoena was dated 3 days ago. Darius knew. He knew the walls were closing in. That was why he was so desperate to impress the senator tonight. He was looking for a lifeline, a political favor to make the investigation go away. I forwarded the email to Mr. Sterling. Add this to the file. I typed. Then I opened another window. The interface of ZPay, my company. The dashboard showed real-time transactions. Millions of dollars flowing through the system every second. We provided microloans to minority-owned businesses, people who the big banks ignored. People like me. We used an algorithm I wrote myself on library computers 7 years ago. Tonight at midnight, the acquisition by Omnicorp would go public. ZPay was being bought for $3.5 billion. As the majority shareholder, my cut was $1.2 billion. I was not just rich, I was wealthy. I was power. And my family treated me like a beggar. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pushed aside the rack of flannel shirts and hoodies. Behind them in a garment bag was a suit. A white silk tuxedo suit tailored in Paris. I took it out. I went to the bathroom and washed my face. I applied a layer of red lipstick, dark blood red. I brushed my hair back into a sleek bun. I put on the suit. It fit like armor. I put on the diamond earrings I had bought myself for my 30th birthday. Real diamonds. Flawless. I looked in the mirror. The girl in the wool coat was gone. The billionaire was here. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from my mother. I heard you refused to help your brother. You are a selfish, ungrateful child. I was in labor with you for 20 hours. I gave you life, and you cannot give your brother $500. Do not contact us again until you learn what family means. I stared at the message. Learn what family means. I typed a reply, but I did not send it. I saved it as a draft. Family means nobody gets left behind, I whispered to the empty room, unless they push you off the boat. I looked at the clock. 11:30. I sat back down at the monitors. The party was getting louder. The senator had arrived. My father was shaking his hand vigorously, bowing slightly like a servant. Darius was laughing too loud, his arm around the senator's shoulder. They had no idea. They were dancing on the edge of a cliff. I pulled up the contact for Julian, my co-founder, and the man I had been secretly seeing for 2 years. He was in New York, standing on a balcony overlooking Times Square. He would be ringing the bell at the stock exchange tomorrow morning. I FaceTimed him. His face filled the screen. He looked handsome in his scarf and coat, the lights of the city reflected in his eyes. "Hey, billionaire," he smiled. "You look ready to kill." "I am ready," I said. "Are you sure about this, Zara?" Julian asked, his voice turning serious. "Once we pull the trigger, there is no going back. They will be destroyed, not just financially, their reputation, their standing, everything they care about. They destroyed me first, Julian. They just did it slowly over 35 years. I am just returning the favor efficiently." Julian nodded. He knew the stories. He had held me while I cried after holidays where they made me sit at the kids' table. He had loaned me the money to buy my first server when my parents refused to co-sign a loan. "Okay," he said. "The press release is loaded. The wire services have it. At 12:0001, it goes live to every news outlet in the world: CNN, Bloomberg, MSNBC. They are all running it as the breaking news for the new year." "Good," I said. "And the house?" Julian asked. "Sterling closed it an hour ago. The bank was happy to sell the distressed mortgage. They have not paid in 6 months. So you are their landlord. I am their landlord. I am their boss. And I am their executioner." Julian smiled, but it was a sad smile. "I wish they had been better to you, Zara. I really do." "Me too," I whispered. "But we do not get the parents we want. We get the lessons we need. I love you, Julian. See you in Paris. See you in Paris." I ended the call. 11:55. On the screen, my father was gathering everyone around the massive 85-inch TV in the living room. They were switching the channel to the countdown. "Everyone grab a glass." My father shouted, "We are toasting to the Vance legacy, to Darius, to the future, to the future." They cheered. I poured myself a glass of the instant noodle broth. It was not champagne, but it tasted like victory. 5 minutes. I watched them. They looked so happy, so confident. Tiffany was rubbing her belly, whispering to her friends. Darius was checking his watch, probably calculating when he could ask the senator for that favor. My mother was fixing her hair in the reflection of the window, making sure she looked perfect for the photos. They were a portrait of American success. A lie painted in gold leaf. 4 minutes. My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. The quarterly dividend had just hit. Another $15 million deposited into my operating account. I swiped it away. 3 minutes. I zoomed in on Darius' face on the monitor. I could see the sweat on his upper lip. He was terrified. He knew the SEC was coming. He just hoped he could outrun them. He thought he was the smart one. He thought I was the failure. 2 minutes. I opened the group chat. The one they had kicked me out of, but I had hacked back into months ago just to monitor them. I typed a message. 1 minute. On the TV in their living room, the ball in Times Square was beginning to drop. The crowd was chanting. 10, 9, 8. My family joined in. 7, 6, 5. I put my finger on the send button. 4, 3, 2. Happy New Year. They screamed. Corks popped. Confetti flew. 1, 0. I hit send. The message appeared on all their phones at once. Check the news. And then on their giant TV, the screen cut away from the cheering crowds. The breaking news banner flashed red. Breaking historic tech deal. The anchor voice filled the room, drowning out their cheers. In a stunning start to the new year, Atlanta-based fintech giant ZPay has been acquired for $3.5 billion. My father stopped clapping. My mother froze with her glass halfway to her mouth. The founder of ZPay, the elusive tech genius who has remained anonymous for 7 years, has finally revealed her identity. A photo filled the screen. A professional headshot of me, wearing the white suit, looking directly into the camera. Strong, powerful, billionaire. Meet Zara Vance, the richest self-made woman in Georgia. The silence in the living room was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. Tiffany dropped her glass. Red wine splashed across her white maternity dress, looking like a gunshot wound. Darius' mouth fell open. He looked from the TV to his phone where my text message was glowing. My father clutched his chest. He staggered back, hitting the mantelpiece. My mother screamed. Not a scream of joy, a scream of horror, as if she was seeing a ghost. My phone rang. It was Darius. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times. I picked up. "Hello, Darius," I said, my voice ice cold. "Zara," he wheezed. His voice was shaking so hard the phone must have been rattling against his teeth. "What? What is this? What did you do?" "I made something of myself," I said. "Like you always told me to. Dad just saw the news. He is not breathing right, Zara. He is turning gray. Tell him to breathe deeply," I said. "He needs to save his strength." "For what?" Darius screamed. "For the eviction notice," I said, "and the arrest warrant. Check your email, Darius. The FBI is on their way." I hung up the phone. I watched on the monitor as chaos erupted. Guests were whispering, pointing. The senator was quietly slipping out the back door, his security detail clearing the way. He knew a sinking ship when he saw one. My mother was fanning my father. Darius was staring at his phone, looking like he was going to vomit. I took a sip of my broth. "Happy New Year, family," I whispered. "The show has just begun." I drove the battered Honda Civic away from the manicured lawns of Buckhead and steered it toward the south side of the city. The heater rattled in the dashboard, blowing lukewarm air that smelled faintly of burning dust. My hands gripped the steering wheel tight enough to turn my knuckles white. I watched the neighborhoods change through the windshield. The wrought iron gates and security patrols faded away, replaced by chain-link fences and overflowing dumpsters. This was the commute I made every day, not because I had to, but because I needed to. I pulled into the parking lot of the complex I called home. It was a block of red brick buildings that had not seen a renovation since the 90s. A group of men stood near the entrance smoking and talking loud, but they nodded at me as I passed. They knew me as the quiet woman in 4B who paid her rent on time and minded her business. They did not know they were nodding at the landlord. I had bought this entire complex 6 months ago through a shell company just to ensure no one would ever evict me again. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, the concrete steps cracked and stained. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and floor wax. I reached my door and unlocked the 3 deadbolts I had installed. The heavy steel door swung open and I stepped into my sanctuary. To the outside world, this apartment was a symbol of my failure. It was the proof my mother needed to tell her friends that I had lost my way. But inside, it was a fortress. The walls were soundproofed. The internet connection was a dedicated fiber optic line that cost more per month than the rent of every unit in the building combined. I took off my coat and threw it on the second-hand beige sofa. I walked to the small kitchenette. It had laminate countertops that were peeling at the corners, and a stove that only had 2 working burners. I filled a pot with water and set it to boil. While the water heated, I walked over to the small bookshelf in the corner. Tucked between a stack of coding manuals and financial reports was a battered leather journal. I pulled it out. The binding was cracked, the pages yellowed with age. I did not need to open it to know what was written on the page marked with the red ribbon. I knew it by heart. I opened it anyway. June 15th, 15 years ago. I was 20 years old. I was holding a thick envelope from Harvard Medical School. I had done it. I had studied while Darius partied. I had worked double shifts at the library while my mother planned galas. I had gotten in. I remembered the smell of my father's study. It smelled of old paper and lemon polish. I had run in there, the letter in my hand, my heart pounding with a joy so pure it felt like light. "Dad," I got in. I had screamed. Harvard. They accepted me. My father, Harold Vance, the esteemed reverend and businessman, did not look up from his ledger. He was writing a check. His hand moved with a steady, practiced rhythm. "That is nice, Zara." He had set his voice flat. Nice. It was a miracle. "I need to send the deposit, Dad," I said, placing the letter on his desk. "The tuition fund. The one Grandma started for us. I need to access it." My father stopped writing. He carefully tore the check from the book and set it aside. Then he took off his reading glasses and looked at me. His eyes were cold. There was no pride in them, only calculation. "There is no fund, Zara." The world had stopped. "What do you mean?" "Grandma put $200,000 in there for me. She told me before she died. It is gone," he said. "Gone. Where? Did we lose it? Was there an emergency? We used it," he said calmly. "Darius needed a new car for his graduation, and the down payment on his condo. He is a man, Zara. He needs to establish himself." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You spent my college money on a car for Darius." "A Porsche." He corrected me. "A Cayenne. It projects success. Appearance is everything in this family, Zara. You know that." "But I got into Harvard," I whispered. "I am going to be a doctor." "No, you are not," he said, closing the ledger. "You are going to be a wife. You are going to find a good man, and you are going to support him. That is your role. Why would I invest $200,000 in a degree you will just waste when you start having babies? You will change your name when you marry Zara. The Vance legacy ends with you." "But Darius carries the name. He is the pillar." The money was better spent on him. I had stood there, the acceptance letter crumbling in my fist. "You stole from me." "I invested in the family," he said. "Now get out. I have a sermon to write." I snapped the journal shut. The memory still tasted like ash in my mouth. That was the day I learned my value. To them, I was not a person. I was a bad investment. I was a temporary asset to be liquidated for the benefit of the golden sun. The water on the stove began to boil, pulling me back to the present. I walked back to the kitchenette. I reached into the cupboard and pulled out a package of instant ramen. It was the cheap kind, the kind that cost 30 cents a pack. The kind I had lived on for 3 years after I walked out of that study and never took another dime from them. But I was not that girl anymore. I opened a small locked safe under the sink. Inside was a jar of white truffle oil imported from Alba and a small glass vial containing edible 24-karat gold flakes. I cooked the noodles, I drained the water, I drizzled the oil over the steaming pasta, the earthy, rich scent filling the small room. Then I carefully sprinkled the gold flakes over the top. I took the bowl to my desk and sat down in front of the wall of monitors. I picked up my chopsticks. I took a bite. It tasted like redemption. I looked at the screens. The party at the mansion was getting louder. The senator was laughing at something Darius said. My mother was clapping her hands in delight. On screen 2, the kitchen feed caught my eye. Darius had walked into the kitchen holding the bottle of wine I had brought, the 1982 Chateau Margaux. He was surrounded by Tiffany and her friends. "Look at this trash," Darius said, holding the bottle up by the neck. "She probably found it in a bargain bin. The label is practically falling off." Tiffany wrinkled her nose. "God, I bet it is vinegar. Why did she even bother? It is insulting, really. Bringing this swill into a house that serves Dom Perignon. Open it." One of her friends giggled. "Let us see how bad it is." Darius grabbed a corkscrew from the counter. He drove it into the cork with a violent twist. He did not treat the bottle with respect. He treated it like an enemy. He yanked the cork out. He did not let it breathe. He did not decant it. He grabbed a red plastic cup from the counter, leftovers from the staff meal, and poured a splash of the deep ruby liquid into it. He took a swig, swishing it around in his mouth like mouthwash. He spat it into the sink. "Ugh," he groaned, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "It tastes like dirt. It is spoiled, just like her." My mother walked into the kitchen then. She saw the open bottle. "What is that?" she asked. "Zara offering." Darius laughed. "It is rancid, Mom. I think she tried to poison us. Throw it out." My mother said, waving her hand. "Do not let the guests see it. It looks cheap." Darius tipped the bottle. I watched on the high-definition screen as $3,000 worth of vintage wine glugged down the stainless steel drain. It splashed against the metal, a dark red river of history and value, wasted on people who could not taste the difference between quality and price tags. They laughed as the last drop disappeared. Darius tossed the empty bottle into the recycling bin with a loud clatter. "Good riddance," he said. I sat in my dark apartment, illuminated only by the blue light of the monitors. I chewed my gold-covered noodles slowly. They thought they had thrown away trash. They did not know they had just poured their own lifeline down the drain. I swallowed. The truffle oil was rich and smooth. I looked at the clock on the corner of my screen. 10:30 p.m. 90 minutes left. I reached for my keyboard. I opened a terminal window. It was time to check on the other surprise I had prepared, the one that was not a bottle of wine. I typed in a command. A new window popped up. It was the back-end access to the server of the First Community Bank of Atlanta, the bank my father sat on the board of, the bank where Darius kept his operating accounts. I was not hacking. I owned the software they used to process transactions. Z-Pay was the engine under their hood. They just did not know the driver was the girl they had kicked out into the snow. I queried Darius' account. Balance negative $400,000. I queried the transaction history. He had been moving money all week. Frantic transfers, covering shorts, paying off bookies. And then I saw it. A transfer pending for tomorrow morning, January 1st, from the Harold Vance Retirement Trust. To Darius Vance. Personal checking. Amount $500,000. My father was emptying his retirement. He was giving Darius everything he had left to save him from prison. He was doing exactly what he had done to me 15 years ago, sacrificing the future to cover the golden child mistakes. But this time the money would not clear, because at 12 o'clock Z-Pay would freeze all accounts associated with suspicious activity pending a federal audit. An audit I had triggered 3 days ago. I watched my father on the screen. He was smiling, shaking hands, playing the part of the successful patriarch. He did not know he was already bankrupt. He did not know he had signed his life away to a son who saw him as nothing more than a piggy bank. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. I was not crying for them. I was crying for the 20-year-old girl in that study who had begged for her future and been handed a rejection slip. I finished my noodles. I set the bowl aside. "You want a show, family," I whispered to the screens. "I will give you a show." I opened my email client. I composed a new message. To the Board of Directors, First Community Bank. From the Office of the CEO, Z Pay Inc. Subject: Immediate suspension of services. I hovered my mouse over the send button. I scheduled it for 11:59 p.m. I leaned back in my chair and watched them dance. Dance, you fools. Dance while the floor is still there. Because when the clock strikes 12, gravity is going to work very differently for the Vance family. I sat in the glow of the monitors, my dinner finished, but the taste of gold and truffle oil still lingering on my tongue like a promise. On screen 1, the party at 4500 Tuxedo Road had reached a fever pitch of performative wealth. It was a masterclass in smoke and mirrors. The crystal chandelier that my mother claimed was an antique from France was actually a high-end replica from a catalog. The Persian rugs were real, but they were leased for the weekend. Everything about the Vance family was a production designed to convince the world that we belonged in the upper echelons of Atlanta society. My father Harold was standing near the grand piano holding a glass of amber liquid that he swirled with practiced ease. He had cornered the senator and two other local men who controlled zoning permits and city contracts. I turned up the volume on the feed. The microphone I had hidden in the decorative vase on the mantelpiece picked up his voice with crystal clarity. "You know, gentlemen, my son Darius is not just a fund manager," Harold boomed, his chest puffing out. "He is a visionary. This new fund he is launching, the Apex Capital Group, it is doing things that Wall Street is too afraid to touch. We are seeing returns of 20% month over month, 20%, in this economy." The senator raised an eyebrow, looking impressed. 20% is unheard of, Harold. How is he managing that? "Algorithms," my father said, waving his hand dismissively as if he understood the math. "Proprietary trading bots. Darius has a team of geniuses working for him. He is turning $5,000 into $50,000 overnight. I put my own retirement in. All of it. That is how much I believe in him." I winced. I looked away from the screen to the file open on my laptop. It was the forensic accounting report my private investigator had sent over an hour ago. The file name was simply The House of Cards. I scrolled through the pages. There were no trading bots. There were no algorithms. There was just Darius moving money from one shell company to another, skimming off the top to pay for his Porsche, his condo, and Tiffany designer maternity clothes. The report detailed a classic Ponzi scheme in its death spiral. Darius had taken money from the church building fund, promising to double it. He had taken money from our elderly neighbors, the Johnsons, promising them a safe nest egg. And he had taken my father's retirement fund. But the most damning document was on page 42. It was a deed of trust. 3 months ago, Darius had convinced my father to take out a second mortgage on the mansion, a high-interest hard money loan, the kind of loan you only take when no bank will touch you. The house that Harold was standing in, the house he was bragging about, did not belong to him anymore. It belonged to a predatory lender in Delaware, or it did until this morning. Because when Mr. Sterling saw that loan pop up in the public records, he bought it. My holding company now owned the debt. I owned the paper that said my parents were living on borrowed time. On the screen, Darius walked over to join the circle. He clapped his hand on my father's shoulder. "Dad, are you telling them about Apex again?" Darius laughed, but his eyes were darting around the room, nervous. "Just bragging on you, son." Harold beamed. "I was telling the senator about the expansion." Darius' smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Yes, well, we are keeping things exclusive for now, Senator. But we might have room for a man of your stature." I watched Darius' face closely. I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. He was desperate. He needed the senator buy-in, not for the prestige but for the cash. He needed fresh capital to pay off the investors who were asking questions. He was fishing for a whale to save him from drowning. I switched my attention to screen 3. The kitchen had cleared out, but Tiffany and her friends had moved to the sunroom. It was the room my mother used to display her collection of porcelain dolls I was never allowed to touch as a child. Tiffany was lounging on a floral chaise holding a glass of sparkling cider. She looked the picture of glowing motherhood if you ignored the sneer on her lips. A woman in a red dress leaned in close to Tiffany. "So where is the sister-in-law? I heard she was back in town." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Zara. Oh, honey, we do not talk about her. It is just too painful for Beatrice." "Why?" the woman asked, lowering her voice. "Is she on drugs or something?" Tiffany sighed a long, suffering sound that suggested she was carrying the weight of the world. "I wish it were that simple. No, Zara has mental health issues, severe ones." I froze, my hands clenched into fists on the desk. "She is bipolar." Tiffany lied effortlessly. "Or maybe borderline personality disorder. We have tried to get her help. Harold and Beatrice spent a fortune on therapists. But she is just unstable. She gets violent. She screams. She makes up stories about how we abuse her. It is a delusion persecution complex." The woman in the red dress gasped. "That is terrifying. And you are pregnant. You cannot have that around the baby." "Exactly," Tiffany said, rubbing her stomach. "That is why we had to set boundaries. We had to cut her off. For her own good, really. She needs to hit rock bottom before she can get better. But she just wanders around the city working these dead-end jobs looking homeless. It is embarrassing, honestly. Harold is a pillar of the community, and his daughter looks like she sleeps under a bridge." I felt a cold rage settle in my chest. It was heavier than the anger I had felt earlier. This was different. This was character assassination. They were not just excluding me. They were erasing my credibility. They were painting me as a lunatic, so that if I ever did speak up, if I ever told the truth about the money they stole or the abuse I suffered, no one would believe me. "I am just the crazy sister," I whispered to the empty apartment. "The unstable one." Tiffany continued. "Last time she came over, she accused me of stealing her mother jewelry. Can you imagine? Beatrice gave me that necklace as a welcome gift, and Zara started screaming that it belonged to her. We had to threaten to call the police to get her to leave." I remembered that day. It was 2 years ago. I had gone to the house to pick up a box of my old books I had left in the attic. I saw Tiffany wearing my grandmother locket, the locket my grandmother had promised me on her deathbed, the locket my mother swore had been lost in the move. When I asked about it, my mother had told me I was mistaken, that it was a new piece she bought for Tiffany. I had cried. I had not screamed. I had cried because I knew they were lying and there was nothing I could do about it. I looked at the time. 11 p.m. 1 hour left. I picked up my phone. I scrolled to Julian contact. I hesitated. We had a plan. We were going to release the news tomorrow morning when the markets opened. We were going to let them have their night, let them wake up to the hangover of their lives. But listening to Tiffany, listening to my father sell his friends down the river to save his thief of a son, I realized I could not wait. I did not want them to have one more night of peace. I did not want them to sleep soundly in beds they did not own, paid for with money they did not earn. I hit the call button. Julian answered on the second ring. The background noise of New York City was loud behind him, horns honking and the distant roar of the crowd in Times Square. "Hey," he said. "Is everything okay? You called early. Change of plans," I said. "What is wrong? Did they do something?" "They are selling shares of a Ponzi scheme to the senator," I said. "And Tiffany is telling half of Buckhead that I am a violent schizophrenic." Julian was silent for a moment. Then I heard a low growl in his throat. "Okay, so what do we do?" "Move the announcement," I said. "I want it to drop at midnight. On the dot. When the ball drops, I want the news to drop." "That is aggressive, Zara," Julian warned. "It will hijack the news cycle. It will be everywhere." "Good," I said. "I want it everywhere. I want them to see it on every screen in that house. I want the notifications to light up every phone in their pockets. I want there to be nowhere to look, nowhere to hide." I could hear Julian tapping on a keyboard. I am contacting the PR team. We can push the press release to the wire services now with a midnight embargo. It will hit AP Reuters Bloomberg all at once. Do it, I said. And Zara? Julian's voice softened. Are you sure you are okay? Listening to them, it has to be poison. It is, I admitted. But it is the antidote too. Every lie they tell just makes it easier to pull the trigger. I understand, Julian said. Okay, it is done. Midnight. Get your popcorn ready. I hung up the phone. I looked back at the screens. The party was moving into the final phase. Waiters were passing out champagne flutes, but not the Dom Perignon Darius had bragged about. I zoomed in on the bottle. It was a mid-range sparkling wine. They had refilled the expensive bottles in the kitchen. Of course they had. It was all a performance. A facade held together with tape and lies. Darius was now standing on a chair raising his glass. Attention, everyone. He shouted, his voice slurring slightly. Attention. We are 1 hour away from the best year of our lives. 2024 is going to be the year of the Vance family. We are going to the moon, baby. The guests cheered. My mother clapped adoringly, looking up at her son as if he were a messiah. Tiffany smiled calculatingly, touching her pearl necklace. My grandmother necklace. I opened my laptop again. I pulled up the control panel for the smart home system I had installed. I had administrative access. I could control the lights, the thermostat, the locks, and the sound system. I navigated to the media library. I found a playlist I had uploaded years ago and hidden in a subfolder. It was a recording I had made when I was 18, the night they kicked me out. I had recorded our final argument on my phone, my mother voice screaming, "You are a waste of space, Zara. You will never be anything without us." My father voice cold and dismissive, "Get out of my house. You are dead to us." I hovered my cursor over the file. I could play it over the whole house speakers right now. I could let the senator and the neighbors hear exactly who the Vances really were. But no, that was petty. That was the old Zara fighting for scraps of justice. Tonight was not about exposing their past. It was about destroying their future. I closed the media player. I opened my banking app. I transferred another $10,000 to the private investigator account. Find out where Darius is hiding the rest of the money. I typed in the memo line. I knew he had a stash, a go-bag fund, probably crypto or an offshore account in the Caymans. People like Darius always kept a life raft for themselves while they poked holes in everyone else's boat. I leaned back watching the screen. 50 minutes. My mother was now cornering a young woman near the buffet. I recognized her. She was the daughter of a prominent real estate mogul. My mother was working her, trying to set up a lunch date, probably to pitch Darius' fund. She is relentless. I thought, she is like a shark that has to keep swimming or it dies. I wondered if she ever got tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the pretense. Tired of looking at her daughter empty seat at the table and feeling nothing but relief. Probably not. To feel tired, you have to have a conscience to weigh you down. Beatrice Vance traveled light. My phone buzzed. A text from Julian. It is locked and loaded. The world meets Zara Vance in 45 minutes. I took a deep breath. I looked around my apartment. It was quiet. It was simple. It was mine. In 45 minutes, this life would be over. The anonymity, the peace, the ability to walk down the street without being recognized, it would all be gone. I would be a public figure, a target, a symbol. But looking at Darius on the screen, laughing as he toasted with stolen money, looking at Tiffany sneering at my memory, looking at my father selling his soul for a country club membership, I knew it was worth it. I was not just buying the house tonight. I was buying my freedom. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow had stopped. The city lights of Atlanta glowed in the distance. Somewhere out there in the high-rise offices, lawyers were prepping documents, bankers were verifying transfers, and journalists were writing headlines. The machine was in motion. I went back to my desk and sat down. I picked up my glass of instant noodle broth. It was cold now, but I did not care. I raised it to the screen. to the monitors where my family was celebrating their own demise. "Here is to the truth," I said, and then I waited for the clock to strike 12. The digital clock on my monitor read 11:45. The party at the mansion was reaching a crescendo of forced hilarity. On screen 1, the waiters were circulating with silver trays of champagne flutes. The liquid inside sparkled under the rented chandeliers. It looked expensive. It looked festive. But I knew it was the cheap stuff. The vintage bottles were long gone drunk by people who could not tell the difference between quality and a high price tag. I zoomed in on the corner of the room near the grand piano. Darius had cornered my father again. The senator had moved on to charm a young heiress, leaving Harold Vance momentarily vulnerable. Darius leaned in close, his hand gripping my father's shoulder with a tightness that looked painful. I turned up the audio gain on the hidden microphone. "Dad, please," Darius whispered, his voice a frantic hiss. "I need you to sign the guarantor form, now, before midnight." Harold tried to pull away, but Darius held on. "Son, not here. We are celebrating. Can we not discuss business in the morning? There is no morning, Dad." Darius' voice cracked. "If I do not have a guarantor for the bridge loan by 12, the automated audit kicks in. The compliance officers will see the hole in the ledger. They will call the feds, Dad. Do you understand? Federal prison. I am not going to jail because you got cold feet." Harold's face went ashen. The ruddy complexion of the scotch and the heat of the room drained away, leaving him looking old and gray. "Prison." He mouthed the word. "Yes," Darius said. "And it will not just be me. You are on the board, Dad. You sign the quarterly reports. If I go down, you go down. The church goes down. The whole legacy goes down. Just sign the damn paper. It is just a formality until the senator buy-in clears next week." "A formality," I whispered to the screen. The senator was never going to buy in. The senator was currently texting his driver to bring the car around because he had smelled the desperation on Darius like cheap cologne. Harold's hand shook as he reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out a gold fountain pen, a pen he had bought with my tuition money years ago. He looked around the room, terrified that someone would see his weakness. But no one was looking. They were too busy laughing, too busy drinking, too busy admiring the facade of the Vance family's success. Harold took the folded document from Darius' pocket. He did not read it. He did not ask about the terms. He pressed the paper against the polished wood of the piano and scribbled his name. He signed away his freedom. He signed away his reputation. He signed away the last shred of dignity he had left. Darius snatched the paper back, stuffing it into his pocket as if it were a winning lottery ticket. "Thank you," he breathed. "You saved us, Dad. We are going to be rich." Harold did not smile. He took a large gulp of his drink, draining the glass. He looked like a man who had just sold his soul and realized the price was too low. I sat back in my chair. The final piece was in place. My father was now legally complicit. There was no denying it, no claiming ignorance. He had signed the document that would tie him to the fraud forever. I stood up. It was time. I walked to the garment bag hanging on the back of the closet door. I unzipped it slowly, the sound loud in the quiet apartment. Inside was not just a suit. It was armor. It was a white tuxedo suit, tailored by a master in Milan. The fabric was silk and wool, a blend so fine it felt like water against my fingertips. The lapels were satin, sharp enough to cut glass. I had bought it 6 months ago for this exact moment. For the moment, I stopped being Zara the disappointment and started being Zara the billionaire. I stripped off my comfortable sweatpants and the oversized hoodie I wore to hide my figure. I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my simple undergarments. I looked at my body. It was strong. It had carried me through hunger, through exhaustion, through the crushing weight of their expectations. It deserved to be draped in gold. I pulled on the trousers. They fit perfectly, hugging my waist and falling in a clean line to the floor. I buttoned the crisp white shirt. I slipped on the jacket, I buttoned it. I looked in the mirror. The transformation was startling. The woman looking back at me was not the girl who had shivered on the porch an hour ago. This woman was dangerous. This woman owned the bank that held the mortgage on the house where my family was partying. This woman commanded a company worth $3.5 billion. I sat at my vanity table. I opened my makeup case. I did not want to look natural. I wanted to look fierce. I applied a sharp winged eyeliner. I brushed on a layer of highlighter that caught the dim light of the room. And then the lipstick. A deep matte red, the color of power, the color of blood. I pulled my hair back into a severe bun, securing it with diamond pins. I put on the earrings, 2-carat solitaires that sparkled like stars. I was ready. I walked back to the desk and sat down. The monitors bathed me in a cool blue light. 11:50. 10 minutes. On the screen, the mood at the party had shifted. The anticipation of the new year was building. People were grabbing noisemakers and party hats. My mother Beatrice was in her element. She was clapping her hands, her face flushed with excitement and wine. "Everyone gather round," she called out, her voice shrill with delight. "It is almost time. Let us welcome the year of abundance." Abundance. I laughed softly, a dry, humorless sound. My phone buzzed on the desk. The screen lit up with a notification. It was a text message from Mom. I stared at it. Why was she texting me now? She was in the middle of her triumph. I picked up the phone. I unlocked it. Zara. The message read, "We ran out of ice for the champagne buckets. The delivery service is demanding a rush fee and a tip in cash. Send me $500 immediately. Darius said you refused him earlier, but surely you can scrape together something for your mother. Do not be useless for once in your life. Nanleen." I read it twice. Nanleen, hurry up. She was asking me for money, again, $500, for ice. She was standing in a room full of millionaires. She was wearing a dress that cost $2,000. Her son was bragging about a multi-million-dollar fund, and she was texting her daughter, the daughter she had banned from the house, the daughter she called a failure, begging for cash to pay for ice. It was so petty, so small, so perfectly Beatrice. She did not see me as a person. She saw me as an ATM that was occasionally out of order. She saw me as a resource to be mined until it was dry. Do not be useless. The word echoed in my mind. Useless. I remembered the nights I stayed up until 4 in the morning coding the back end of Z-Pay while working a double shift at the diner to pay my rent. I remembered the investors who laughed in my face because I was a young black woman with no degree. I remembered eating peanut butter from the jar because I could not afford bread. I was useful enough to build an empire. I was useful enough to buy her house out from under her. I typed a reply. My fingers flew across the glass screen. "I do not have $500 for ice, Mom." I hit send. I watched the screen. My mother looked down at her phone. She frowned. She typed furiously. My phone buzzed again. "You are a disgrace. After everything we did for you, you cannot even help with a simple party. I regret the day I gave birth to you. Stay away from us. We do not need your negative energy dragging us down. We are going to celebrate without you." I did not reply. There was nothing left to say. She had said it all. She had regretted my birth over a bucket of ice. I put the phone down. 11:55. The TV in the mansion living room was blaring. The countdown coverage from Times Square had begun. The hosts were shouting over the roar of the crowd. The energy was electric. My family gathered around the screen. Harold had his arm around Darius. Tiffany was leaning against Darius' shoulder holding a glass of sparkling cider. Beatrice was front and center, beaming at the TV as if the camera were pointed at her. They looked like a portrait of the American dream. Successful, happy, united. It was all a lie, a beautiful, expensive lie. 11:58. I opened the command terminal on my laptop. I had prepared the sequence days ago. It was a simple script. At 12:00, it would trigger 3 events simultaneously. First, it would push the press release to every major newswire. The headline was already written: Z-Pay acquired. Founder Zara Vance revealed. Second, it would send a mass email to the board of directors at First Community Bank alerting them to the irregularities in the Harold Vance accounts and initiating an immediate freeze of assets. Third, it would send a text message to everyone in my family group chat. A link to the news article. 11:59, 60 seconds. I watched my father raise his glass. "Here is to us," he shouted over the noise of the TV. "To the Vances. May our cup run over. May it run over indeed," I said. The crowd on the TV began to chant. 50 seconds. I smoothed the lapel of my white suit. I checked my reflection in the dark monitor. I looked calm. I looked ready. 40 seconds. Darius kissed Tiffany on the cheek. He looked relieved. He thought he had made it. He thought he had survived another year. He thought the signature in his pocket was a shield. It was an anchor. 30 seconds. My mother was laughing. She looked happy, truly happy, for the last time in her life. 20 seconds. I placed my finger over the enter key. 10. The room inside the mansion was chanting now. My family voices joined the chorus of millions. 9, 8, 7. I took a deep breath. The air in my apartment was still, silent. 6, 5, 4. Goodbye, Zara the failure. 3. Goodbye, Zara the disappointment. 2. Hello, Zara the billionaire. 1. I pressed the key. 0. Happy New Year. The ball dropped. The fireworks exploded over Times Square on the 85-inch screen. The sound of millions of people cheering filled the living room of the mansion in Buckhead. My family screamed, "Happy New Year!" They hugged, they kissed, they raised their glasses of cheap champagne, pretending it was the nectar of the gods. For exactly 3 seconds, they were happy. For exactly 3 seconds, they believed the lie they had constructed so carefully. They believed they were the royalty of Atlanta. They believed Darius was a genius. They believed I was a memory, a stain scrubbed out of the carpet. Then the phones started to buzz. It was not a ripple, it was a wave, a synchronized vibration that hummed through the room like a swarm of angry hornets. Every pocket, every purse, every hand holding a device. My text message arrived at the exact same millisecond. Check the news. Darius was the first to look down. He frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. He looked at the screen of his phone. Then he looked up at the television. The cheering crowd on the screen vanished. The colorful confetti and the smiling hosts cut to black for a fraction of a second. Then the red banner appeared. It slashed across the bottom of the screen like an open wound. Breaking news. The room did not go silent immediately. There was still the murmur of conversation, the clinking of ice against glass. But then, the audio from the TV changed. The festive music was replaced by the urgent staccato beat of the Bloomberg breaking news alert. The senator turned toward the screen. The real estate mogul stopped chewing his canapé. A news anchor appeared. She was sitting at a glass desk, her face serious but excited. The headline behind her was in bold white letters: Unicorn of the Year. Z-Pay acquired for $3.5 billion. My mother Beatrice froze. Her hand was halfway to her mouth holding a cracker. She stared at the screen, blinking rapidly, as if she could blink the words away. The anchor began to speak. Her voice was crisp and professional, cutting through the warm air of the party like a scalpel. Good evening, and Happy New Year! We interrupt your celebration with historic news from the financial world. In a deal finalized just moments ago at the stroke of midnight, the Atlanta-based financial technology firm Z-Pay has been acquired by Omnicorp in an all-cash transaction valued at $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion. The number hung in the air. It was a number so large it felt abstract. It was the GDP of a small country. It was power. It was freedom. Darius lowered his hand. The glass of champagne tilted dangerously. His face was gray. He knew ZPay. Everyone in finance knew ZPay. It was the platform that was eating his market share. It was the platform that had rejected his application for a merchant account 6 months ago because his credit was garbage. The anchor continued. ZPay has revolutionized microlending for minority-owned businesses, providing capital to communities traditionally ignored by major banks. For 7 years, the founder of this company has remained a ghost operating through shell companies and proxies. But tonight, with the finalization of this historic deal, the mystery CEO has finally stepped into the light. The screen changed. The graphic of the company logo dissolved. And there I was. It was the headshot I had taken last week in New York. I was wearing the white suit. My hair was pulled back. My chin was lifted. I was looking directly into the camera lens, directly into the living room, directly into their souls. Beatrice dropped her cracker. It landed on the Persian rug with a soft thud. "Meet Zara Vance," the anchor said. The 35-year-old self-made billionaire who started ZPay from a public library computer. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a vacuum, the silence of a bomb that has detonated, but the sound wave has not hit yet. Tiffany was standing next to the fireplace. She was wearing a white silk maternity dress that cost more than my first car. She was holding a glass of red wine, a Pinot Noir. She stared at the TV. She stared at my face. The face she had called ugly. The face she had mocked for having dark circles under the eyes. Her hand went limp. The crystal glass slipped from her fingers. It hit the marble hearth. It did not just break. It shattered. The red wine exploded outward. It splashed up her legs. It soaked into the white silk of her dress, spreading across her stomach like a blooming flower of blood. She did not move. She did not scream. She just stared at the screen where my face was smiling a cold, knowing smile. Darius made a sound. It was a high-pitched wheeze like a tire losing air. He looked at the TV, then at his phone, then at the TV again. The anchor voice continued. "We have an exclusive pre-recorded interview with Ms. Vance. The video feed cut to me sitting in a studio chair. I looked calm. I looked expensive." "Ms. Vance," the interviewer on the screen asked, "this is an incredible achievement. You have become one of the wealthiest women in the country overnight. You built this with no venture capital, no seed funding from family. How did you do it?" On the screen, I smiled. It was a smile that did not reach my eyes. I learned the value of $1 very early. I said, my voice smooth and articulate. I learned that if you want to survive, you cannot depend on anyone. Not banks, not institutions, and certainly not safety nets. The camera zoomed in on my face. The interviewer nodded. "You come from a prominent family in Atlanta. Your father is the Reverend Harold Vance. Your brother runs a hedge fund. Did their background in finance help you?" I laughed on screen. It was a dry sound. "My family taught me everything I know about money," I said. In the living room, my father's chest puffed out slightly. Even in his shock, his ego was trying to find a foothold. He thought I was going to praise him. He thought I was going to give him the credit he craved. "They taught me that money is the only language some people speak." I continued on the screen. "And they taught me the importance of independence." I paused for effect. I looked directly into the camera. "I want to thank my family, actually. I want to thank my parents, Harold and Beatrice, and my brother Darius. They taught me how to be self-made by ensuring I had to be. They gave me the greatest gift a parent can give a child. They gave me absolutely nothing." The air in the living room seemed to vanish. "They did not give me seed money," I said, my voice hardening. "They did not give me advice. They did not even give me a room in their house when I needed one. They cut me off. They told me I was a failure. They taught me that if I wanted to eat, I had to hunt. So I hunted, and I built Z. Pay, not with their help, but in spite of it. So this victory, this $3.5 billion, it is mine, 100% mine. The interview clip ended. The anchor returned, shaking her head in admiration. A powerful statement from a powerful woman. The anchor said, Zara Vance proves that success is the best revenge. The screen faded to a commercial for luxury cars. In the living room, the silence broke. It started with a whisper. Did she say nothing? A woman in a sequined dress whispered to her husband. But Beatrice told me they funded her rehab. I thought she was mentally ill. Another guest murmured. Tiffany told me she was in a facility overseas. Overseas. A man laughed harshly. She is a billionaire. She owns the company that just bought my bank. The whispers grew louder. They turned into a buzz, a swarm of judgment descending on the Vance family. The guests were looking at my parents now. They were not looking at them with respect. They were looking at them with suspicion. They were looking at them like they were frauds. Because they were. My father staggered. He put his hand on the grand piano to steady himself. His face was the color of old ash. He looked at the guests. He saw the shift. He saw the senator turning away, checking his phone, probably texting his aide to scrub any photos of him at this party. Harold tried to speak. His voice was a croak. She is lying, he said to the room at large. She is confused. We helped her. We gave her everything. But no one was listening. The spell was broken. The image of the benevolent patriarch was shattered by the high-definition reality of my bank account. My mother Beatrice was trembling. She looked down at her phone. The notification from the family group chat was still there. Check the news. She looked up at Darius. Darius, she hissed. Do something. Tell them it is a lie. Tell them she stole the idea from you. Darius could not speak. He was staring at his phone. But he was not looking at my text. He was looking at an email notification that had just popped up. I knew what it was. It was the notification from his bank. The bank my company now owned. Account frozen due to suspicious activity. Darius dropped his phone. It hit the hardwood floor with a crack. He looked at Tiffany. She was standing in a puddle of red wine. Her white dress ruined her face, a mask of horror. She looked at him with eyes that were suddenly very clear and very calculating. She was realizing she had bet on the wrong horse. The senator walked past my father. He did not shake his hand. He did not say goodbye. He just walked to the door, signaling his wife to follow. Harold, the senator said, his voice cold as he passed. I think we need to rethink that zoning application. My office will be in touch. Or my lawyers will. One by one, the guests began to move. It was a stampede of silk and velvet. No one wanted to be standing next to the Vances when the debris started to fall. They grabbed their coats. They muttered vague excuses about early mornings and babysitters. My mother tried to stop them. Innovative. Wait, she pleaded, grabbing the arm of the woman she had been pitching earlier. We have not even cut the cake. Darius has an announcement. The woman pulled her arm away as if my mother's touch was contagious. I think we have heard enough announcements for one night, Beatrice. Your daughter seems to be the only one in this family who actually tells the truth. She walked out. Within 3 minutes, the room was empty. The music was still playing, a cheerful jazz standard that sounded grotesque in the emptiness. Only my family remained. Tiffany stood in the wine puddle, shivering. Darius stood by the window, looking out at the driveway where the taillights of his investors were fading into the night. My mother sat on the sofa, her face buried in her hands. My father stood in the center of the room, clutching his chest, breathing in short, shallow gasps. I watched it all from my desk. I took another sip of broth. It was perfect. It was better than I had imagined. They were alone, they were exposed, and they were broke. My phone rang. It was Darius. I looked at the screen. I let it ring. I wanted him to sweat. I wanted him to think I was not going to answer. I wanted him to realize that for the first time in his life, he needed me, and I did not need him. On the fourth ring I picked up. I did not say hello. I did not ask how the party was. I just breathed into the phone. Zara. Darius' voice was unrecognizable. It was high and thin like a child who has lost his mother in a crowd. Zara, please. Hello, Darius, I said. Happy New Year. You ruined us. He sobbed. You ruined everything. The investors, the senator, they are all leaving. Dad is having a heart attack. He is not having a heart attack, I said calmly. He is having a panic attack. There is a difference. One is fatal. The other is just the physical manifestation of realizing you are a fraud. You have to fix this, Darius pleaded. You have to put out a statement. Tell them we helped you. Tell them you were joking. Tell them we are partners. Partners. I laughed. Partners split the profits, Darius. We are not partners. I am the acquisition firm. You are the distressed asset. What do you want? He screamed. I want you to look at your email, I said. What? Look at your email, Darius. The one from HR. I watched on the monitor as he picked up his cracked phone. He tapped the screen with shaking fingers. He read the email. His knees gave out. He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor. You fired me, he whispered. I did, I said. My company acquired First Community Bank at 12:01 a.m. As the new majority owner, I reviewed the personnel files. It seems the head of the investment division has been embezzling funds. We have a zero-tolerance policy for theft, Darius. You are terminated effective immediately. Security is on the way to your office to clear out your desk. Do not try to go there. Your badge has been deactivated. You cannot do this. He wailed. I have a baby on the way. I have a mortgage. Correction, I said. You had a mortgage. I own that too. And Tiffany, baby? Well, I hope the kid likes public housing because that is where you are headed. My mother snatched the phone from Darius. Zara, she screamed. You ungrateful witch! How dare you! We are your parents, and I am your landlord, I said. What? She gasped. 4500 Tuxedo Road, I said, reciting the address. I bought the note, Beatrice. You have not paid the mortgage in 6 months. Darius told you he was handling it, but he was stealing the money. The bank was going to foreclose next week. I just accelerated the process. You own this house, she whispered. I own the roof over your head. I own the chair you are sitting on. I own the debt that is crushing you. And do you know what the best part is, Mom? She did not answer. She was sobbing. The best part is that I am going to evict you, I said. No, she begged. No, Zara. Please. Where will we go? I do not know, I said. Maybe you can try the airport. I hear the benches are comfortable this time of year. I hung up the phone. I watched them for a moment longer. The jazz music played on. My father was sitting on the floor now, loosening his tie, gasping for air. My mother was holding him, rocking back and forth. Darius was staring at the wall, catatonic. Tiffany was trying to wipe the wine off her dress, spreading the stain further. They looked small. They looked pathetic. I reached for the power button on my monitor. I did not need to watch anymore. The show was over. I turned off the screens. The room went dark. I stood up. I walked to the window. The first fireworks of the new year were fading over the city skyline. I was alone. But for the first time in 35 years, I was not lonely. I was free. My phone vibrated against the desk surface, buzzing like an angry hornet trapped in a jar. The screen illuminated the dark room, flashing the name Darius over and over again. I stared at it. I took another sip of my broth, savoring the warmth as it slid down my throat. On the monitors above the chaos in the mansion was unfolding in high-definition silence. I could see my brother's mouth moving. I could see him screaming into his phone. I could see the veins bulging in his neck. I reached out and tapped the answer button. I pressed the speaker icon. "Hello, Darius," I said. My voice was calm, level, and utterly devoid of warmth. "Zara." His voice exploded through the phone speakers, distortion crackling at the edges. It was a sound I had never heard from him before. Gone was the smooth baritone of the investment banker. Gone was the arrogant drawl of the big brother who knew better. This was the high-pitched keen of a frightened animal cornered in a trap. "Zara, are you there? Answer me." "I am here, Darius," I said. "I am right here. What is this? What is happening?" "The news. Is it real? Tell me it is a prank. Tell me you hacked the broadcast. You are good with computers, right? Tell me this is some sick joke." "It is not a joke," I said, leaning back in my chair. "It is a press release. It is a statement of fact. I am the CEO of ZPay, and I am a billionaire." I heard a gasping sound on the other end. It sounded like he was drowning. "You," he sputtered, "you, but you drive a Honda. You live in the ghetto. We saw you. We saw your clothes. You smell like poor people, Zara." I laughed. It was a low, dry sound. Dry. "I smell like fiscal responsibility, Darius. That is a scent you would not recognize because you have been drowning in Chanel and desperation for a decade. How?" he screamed. "How could you hide this? We are your family. You let us think you were nothing. You let us treat you like garbage." "I did not let you do anything," I said. "You chose to treat me like garbage. You looked at a book by its cover and you threw it in the trash. I just let you stay in the dark because you never bothered to turn on the light." There was a crash on the other end of the line. On the monitor, I saw Darius kick a chair. It skidded across the parquet floor and slammed into the wall. Tiffany flinched, clutching her stomach. "You are a monster," Darius hissed. "Do you know what you have done? Look at Dad. Look at him, Zara." I looked at screen 1. My father, Harold Vance, was slumped in the armchair near the fireplace. His hand was clutching the left side of his chest. His mouth was open, gasping for air like a fish on a dock. His eyes were wide, rolling back slightly in his head. My mother was kneeling beside him, fanning him with a cocktail napkin, screaming for water. "He is having a heart attack," Darius shouted into the phone. "You are killing him. Are you happy now? You come back here with your billions and your revenge and you kill your own father. He cannot breathe, Zara. He is dying." I watched the screen closely. I zoomed in on the feed. I had spent 2 years in medical school before they cut my funding. I knew what a myocardial infarction looked like. I knew the signs, the pallor, the diaphoresis, the radiating pain. Harold Vance was not sweating. His color was fine. In fact, his cheeks were flushed red with rage, not gray with ischemia. He was gripping his chest, but his other hand was reaching for his Scotch glass, which my mother had pushed out of reach. "He is not dying, Darius," I said, my voice flat. "He is having a panic attack. There is a massive difference. One requires a defibrillator. The other requires a paper bag and a reality check." "How dare you?" Darius screamed. "He is your father." "He stopped being my father the day he stole my tuition to buy your Porsche," I said. "He stopped being my father the day he looked me in the eye and told me my only value was as a wife. So do not talk to me about fathers. Talk to me about assets, because that is the only language Harold Vance understands." "Tell him to breathe deeply," I continued. "Tell him to conserve his oxygen. He is going to need it." "Need it for what?" Darius' voice trembled. "What else could you possibly do? You have humiliated us. You have bought our house. Is that not enough?" "No," I said. "That was just the opening act. We have not even gotten to the intermission. What are you talking about?" "I want you to put the phone down, Darius," I said. "I want you to check your email." "I am not checking my email," he yelled. "My father is dying and you want me to check my email. You are psychotic. Check. Your work, email." I enunciated every word slowly, clearly, like I was speaking to a child, specifically the one from the Human Resources Department at First Community Bank. There was a silence on the line. On the monitor, I saw Darius lower the phone from his ear. He looked at it confused. Then he looked at his watch. "It is midnight, Zara," he whispered. "HR is closed. HR is never closed when the owner makes a call." I said, "Owner, check the email, Darius." I watched on the screen. Darius fumbled with his phone. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped it once. He picked it up. He tapped the screen. He swiped to his mail app. I waited. I took a bite of a cracker. I saw the moment the email loaded. I saw the color drain from his face. It started at his hairline and washed down his neck, leaving him pale and ghostly. His eyes widened until I thought they might pop out of his skull. His knees buckled. He did not fall, but he staggered, leaning heavily against the wall for support. "No," he whispered. The word was so soft I barely heard it over the line. "No, this is impossible. Read it out loud," I commanded. Darius shook his head. He looked around the room as if searching for an exit. But there were no exits. Not from this. "Read it," I said, sharper this time. "Or I will read it for you over the house intercom system." Darius swallowed hard. He brought the phone closer to his face. "To Darius Vance." He read, his voice breaking. "Senior Vice President of Investments. Subject notice of immediate termination and pending legal action." He stopped. He looked up at the ceiling as if praying to a god he had ignored for years. "Keep reading," I said. "Effective immediately. Your employment with First Community Bank is terminated for cause. Following the acquisition of First Community Bank by Z-Pay Incorporated at 12:01 a.m. today, an internal audit was conducted on all executive accounts." He stopped again. A sob escaped his throat. "And," I prompted, "what did the audit find, Darius?" "Irregularities," he whispered. "Massive irregularities indicating embezzlement, fraud, and misappropriation of client funds." He slid down the wall until he was sitting on the floor, his tuxedo pants bunching up around his ankles. He looked like a broken doll. "The evidence has been turned over to the Securities and Exchange Commission and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You are hereby barred from entering bank premises. Your assets have been frozen pending a federal investigation." He dropped the phone. It clattered onto the hardwood floor. I watched him. He pulled his knees up to his chest and buried his face in his hands. Tiffany was staring at him. She looked from him to the TV screen, where my face was still beaming in triumph. She put a hand over her mouth. She knew. She knew the money was gone. She knew the lifestyle was gone. My mother looked up from fanning my father. "What is it, Darius?" she asked, her voice shrill with panic. "What did she do now?" "She bought the bank, Mom." Darius moaned into his hands. "She bought the bank." "What bank?" "My bank, the bank I work for. She bought it, and she fired me. She knows, Mom. She knows about the money." Beatrice Vance went still. She looked at the phone lying on the floor as if it were a venomous snake. "She knows," Beatrice whispered. "Everything," I said, my voice booming from the phone speaker on the floor. "I know about the Ponzi scheme. I know about the church funds. I know about the second mortgage. I know about the fake diamonds, Mom. I know you pawned the real ones to pay off Darius' bookie in Vegas 3 years ago." Beatrice gasped. She clutched her necklace instinctively. "How?" she shrieked at the phone. "How could you possibly know that? Because I bought the pawn shop too." I lied. I had not bought the pawn shop, but I wanted her to feel the walls closing in from every direction. I wanted her to feel like there was nowhere on earth she could hide from me. "You are the devil," my mother screamed. "You are a demon sent to test us." "I am not a demon, Mom," I said. I am the karma you have been accruing for 35 years, and the bill is due. My father suddenly sat up. The panic attack seemed to pause, replaced by the cold survival instinct of a con man. He grabbed the phone from the floor. Zara. He said, his voice raspy. Listen to me. We can fix this. We are family. You cannot send your brother to prison. It will destroy us. It will destroy the family name. Think about the legacy. The legacy. I laughed. Dad, the Vance legacy is a lie. It is a house of cards built on stolen tuition money and fake smiles. There is nothing to save. I can make you a deal, he said, desperate now, bargaining. I have connections. I know people. The senator left Dad. I cut him off. He walked out the back door 10 minutes ago. He is probably on the phone with his lawyer right now, distancing himself from you. You have no friends. You have no allies. You have nothing but me. Then help us, he begged. If you have nothing but us, help us. Pay the money back. Make the audit go away. You own the company. You can delete the files. Just delete them, Zara. For God's sake, please. Delete them, I asked. You want me to commit a federal crime to save the son who called me trash an hour ago. You want me to risk my $3.5 billion empire to save the brother who poured my gift down the sink. He is your blood, Harold pleaded. He is a parasite, I said. And so are you. I looked at the clock. 12:15. I have a flight to catch, I said. Flight. Where are you going? Paris, I said. I have a breakfast meeting on the Champs-Élysées. You cannot leave, Harold shouted. You cannot leave us like this. The police are coming. I know, I said. I called them. Silence. You called the police on your own family. I called the police on criminals who have been stealing from their community, I said. It just so happens that those criminals share my last name. I reached for the mouse. I hovered over the button to disconnect the call. One last thing, I said. What? Harold whispered. I hope you enjoyed the party. It cost you everything. I hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. My heart was pounding in my chest, a slow, heavy rhythm. I felt lightheaded, not from fear but from the sheer adrenaline of the kill. It was done. The button was pushed, the bomb was dropped. I looked back at the monitors. The living room was a tableau of despair. Darius was rocking back and forth on the floor. Tiffany was screaming at him, hitting his shoulder with her fists. My mother was sobbing hysterically, pulling at her hair. My father was staring at the blank TV screen, his mouth open, his eyes empty. They looked like characters in a tragedy, a play about hubris and greed. And I was the director who had just called cut. I stood up, I walked to the kitchenette, I picked up the empty bowl of noodles. I rinsed it in the sink. I dried it. I put it away. I walked to the closet and pulled out my travel bag. It was already packed. Just the essentials. My passport, my laptop, a change of clothes. I did not need much. I could buy anything I needed when I landed. I put on my coat. Not the wool one, a new one. Cashmere, black, sleek. I walked to the door. I paused. I looked back at the apartment. The monitors were still glowing blue in the dark, the image of my ruined family flickering on the screens. I should turn them off, I thought. But I did not. I wanted them to run. I wanted the recording to continue. I wanted every second of their downfall documented, archived, and saved. I opened the door and walked out into the hallway. The smell of boiled cabbage was gone. The air smelled crisp and cold. I walked down the stairs. I pushed open the front door of the building. A black town car was waiting at the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Ms. Vance, he said, we are ready for you at the private airfield. Thank you, I said. I slid into the back seat. The leather was warm. The car smelled of expensive leather and fresh citrus. As the car pulled away, I looked out the window. I saw the lights of the city sliding past. I saw the fireworks fading in the sky. I picked up my phone. I removed the SIM card. I snapped it in half. I rolled down the window and tossed the pieces out. They disappeared into the slush on the side of the road. I leaned back and closed my eyes. For the first time in 35 years, the noise in my head stopped. The voices telling me I was not enough. The voices telling me I was ugly. The voices telling me I was a failure. They were gone, replaced by the hum of the engine and the silence of absolute total victory. I watched the sun rise over the Atlantic Ocean from 40,000 feet. The cabin of the private jet was silent save for the hum of the engines. I sipped an espresso that had been brewed by a flight attendant who knew better than to speak to me while I was working. My laptop was open on the fold-out table. The screen was split. On the left was the live feed of the Paris stock market opening. On the right was the security feed from the hallway of my old apartment building in Atlanta. It was 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the morning of January 1st. The air in Atlanta was gray and slushy, the kind of morning that seeped into your bones and made you regret waking up. A black Range Rover screeched to a halt in front of the brick building. It was parked illegally in a fire lane. I smiled. They were desperate. They did not care about parking tickets anymore. They had bigger problems. The doors flew open. My family spilled out onto the cracked sidewalk like rats fleeing a sinking ship. They looked like wrecks. My father Harold was still wearing his tuxedo trousers, but he had replaced the jacket with a heavy wool coat that looked like he had slept in it. His face was unshaven, his eyes sunken and wild. Darius was wearing a tracksuit that cost $500, but he wore it like a prison uniform. He was shaking. Whether from the cold or the withdrawal from his lifestyle, I could not tell. Tiffany struggled out of the back seat. She was wearing oversized sunglasses and clutching her stomach. She looked miserable. The wine stain on her white dress was hidden under a fur coat, but I knew it was there. A permanent reminder of the moment her gravy train derailed. And then there was Beatrice, my mother. She was the only one who had tried to pull herself together. She had applied fresh lipstick, she had brushed her hair, she was wearing her best church hat. She was ready to perform. She was ready to play the role of the forgiving mother, welcoming the prodigal daughter back into the fold. She thought she could charm the billions out of my pocket. I turned up the volume on my headphones. The microphone I had installed in the hallway light fixture picked up the sound of their footsteps pounding up the stairs. "Hurry up," Darius hissed. "We need to catch her before she leaves. She is probably packing. She is not going anywhere." My mother panted, her breath coming in short bursts. "She does not have anywhere to go. This is all she has, that little apartment. God, I can smell the cabbage from here." They reached the third floor. They stood in front of door 4B, the door I had locked for the last time hours ago. My mother smoothed her coat. She took a deep breath. She arranged her face into a mask of benevolent concern. "Let me do the talking," she whispered to the men. "I know how to handle her. She is just acting out. She wants attention. We will give her attention. We will tell her we are proud of her. We will invite her to brunch. And then we will have her sign the power of attorney." Power of attorney! I laughed into my espresso cup. She actually thought she could get me to sign over control. The delusion was magnificent. My father nodded, his hands twitching at his sides. "Just get the money, Beatrice. I do not care what you have to say to her. Just get the access codes to the bank accounts. The feds will be at the office on Tuesday. We need to move the funds offshore by Monday night." "Knock, Beatrice," Darius urged. My mother raised her gloved hand. She rapped sharply on the steel door. "Zara!" She called out, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Zara, honey, it is Mommy. Open the door. We need to talk." Silence. She knocked again, harder this time. "Zara, please. We are not mad. We were just shocked last night. That is all. We are so proud of you, honey. A billionaire. My baby girl. Open the door so we can celebrate. We brought donuts. But they did not bring donuts. I watched the feed. Their hands were empty except for the legal documents Darius was clutching. Zara, open this door right now. My father barked, losing his patience. This is your father speaking. Stop playing games. Still silence. Darius stepped forward. He pounded on the door with his fist. Zara, I know you are in there. I can hear you. Open the door or I will kick it down. He kicked the door. It did not budge. It was reinforced steel. I had installed it to keep people out. People exactly like them. They stood there for 5 minutes pounding and screaming. The veneer of civility stripped away completely. They were not a family. They were a pack of wolves trying to get at the meat. Where is she? Tiffany whined, leaning against the dirty wall. My feet hurt. This place is disgusting. I feel like I'm going to catch a disease just standing here. Maybe she left, Darius said, wiping sweat from his forehead. Maybe she went to the bank on New Year Day. Oh, my father snapped. The banks are closed, you idiot. She is in there. She is hiding. She is scared. Suddenly, a door at the end of the hallway opened. An old man stepped out. He was wearing gray coveralls and holding a heavy ring of keys. It was Mr. Henderson, the building superintendent. He was a man of few words and zero patience. I had hired him specifically because he hated noise. Hey! Mr. Henderson shouted. His voice echoed in the stairwell. What is all this racket? You people are waking up the rats. My mother turned to him. She drew herself up to her full height, attempting to summon the dignity of a buckhead matriarch in a hallway that smelled of bleach and old onions. Sir, she said haughtily, we are looking for my daughter. Zara Vance. She lives in apartment 4B. We are concerned for her welfare. We need you to open this door immediately. Mr. Henderson squinted at them. He looked at their expensive coats and their desperate faces. He chewed on a toothpick slowly. Vance, he said. The girl in 4B. Yes, Darius said, stepping forward aggressively. Zara Vance, open the door, old man. This is a family emergency. Mr. Henderson laughed. It was a dry, scratching sound. She ain't there, son. What do you mean she is not there? My father demanded. Where is she? Mr. Henderson shrugged. Gone. Moved out last night. Saw her get into a fancy car. Big black one. Driver in a suit and everything. Moved out. My mother gasped. But her lease. She cannot just leave. Lease? Mr. Henderson spat the toothpick onto the floor. She ain't got a lease, lady. She owns the building. The hallway went silent. The only sound was the hum of the fluorescent lights. Excuse me, my father whispered. She owns the building, Mr. Henderson repeated, speaking slowly as if talking to simpletons. Bought it cash 6 months ago. Shell company, something called Z-Pay Holdings. I just work for her. My mother grabbed the wall for support. She bought this dump. Mr. Henderson narrowed his eyes. Watch your mouth, lady. This dump is about to be a luxury condo complex. She emptied the building, evicted everyone last month, gave 'em all fat checks to leave quietly, only kept me on to hand over the keys to the demolition crew. Demolition crew. Darius choked. Yeah. Mr. Henderson said, jangling his keys. Wrecking ball comes tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. sharp. She wants the whole thing leveled. Said she wanted to wipe the slate clean. He looked at the door of 4B. She left you a note, though. Said some folks might come looking. Said to give you this. Mr. Henderson reached into the deep pocket of his coveralls. He pulled out a white envelope. It was sealed with red wax. The crest of the Vance family was pressed into the wax. The crest my father had invented 20 years ago to make us look like old money. My mother snatched the envelope. Her hands were shaking so hard she tore the paper as she opened it. She pulled out a single sheet of cardstock. It was heavy, expensive paper, the kind used for wedding invitations. She read it. Her eyes widened. Her mouth fell open in a silent scream. "What does it say, Beatrice?" my father demanded. "Read it." My mother could not speak. She handed the paper to Darius. Darius read it aloud. His voice was trembling. "Dear family, if you are reading this, you are standing in the hallway of a building I own, looking for a daughter you never knew. You came here for money. You came here to bully me into saving you from the consequences of your own greed. But I am not here. The apartment behind this door is empty. It has always been empty. It was a stage set, a theater I built to show you exactly what you wanted to see. You wanted to see me struggling, so I gave you a struggle. You wanted to see me poor, so I gave you poverty. You were so happy to believe I was a failure that you never looked closer. You never saw the truth. I am not the girl in 4B. I never was. The building is scheduled for demolition tomorrow. I am tearing it down. Just like I am tearing down the debts you owe." My father's eyes lit up. "She is paying the debts," he gasped. "She is saving us." Darius kept reading, his face twisting in horror. "Just kidding. I am not paying your debts. I bought them. I own your mortgage, Dad. I own your car notes, Darius. I own the credit card debt you racked up, Mom. I bought it all for pennies on the dollar from the banks you defrauded. So here is the deal. You have 24 hours to vacate the mansion. The locks will be changed at noon tomorrow. You cannot take the furniture. You cannot take the art. You cannot take the jewelry. That belongs to me now as collateral for the millions you stole. If you try to fight this, my lawyers will release the full audit of Darius Fund to the press. They will release the emails where Dad signed off on the fraud. They will release the video of Mom pawning the church silver. Go, run, start over, try being poor for a while. It builds character. Or so you told me. Happy New Year. Zara." Darius dropped the letter. It fluttered to the dirty floor, landing face up on the concrete. My mother let out a sound that was half sob, half shriek. She lied. My mother screamed. She lied to us. She pretended to be poor. She pretended to be nothing just to laugh at us. She sat in this apartment and laughed at us for years. She mocked us, my father whispered. His face was red, his veins bulging. She made fools of us. She owns us, Darius said. He slumped against the door of 4B. He slid down until he was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. She owns everything. We are homeless. We are destitute. Tiffany started to cry, a thin wailing sound. "My baby," she sobbed. "My baby is going to be born in a shelter." Mr. Henderson watched them with a look of mild amusement. "You folks done?" he asked. "I got work to do. Need to sweep up before the demo crew gets here." My mother lunged at him. "Open the door!" she shrieked, clawing at his coveralls. "Open it. I know she left money in there. She must have. She cannot leave us with nothing." Mr. Henderson pushed her back effortlessly. "Lady, I told you, it is empty. There ain't nothing in there but dust and ghosts. Now get out of my building before I call the cops. And I got the number for the lady owner right here. She said if you cause trouble to have you arrested for trespassing." My father grabbed my mother's arm. "Beatrice, stop. It is over." "No," she screamed, struggling against him. "It is not over. I am her mother. She owes me. She owes me for giving her life. She gave you a life." Darius said, his voice hollow. "She gave you 24 hours to find a new one." My father dragged my mother toward the stairs. She was still screaming, cursing my name, cursing the day I was born. Tiffany followed them, stumbling in her heels, wiping her nose on her fur coat. Darius stood up slowly. He looked at the door of 4B one last time. He touched the cold steel. "You win, Zara," he whispered. "You win." He turned and walked away. I watched them go on the monitor. I watched them pile back into the Range Rover. I watched them drive away, leaving the illegal parking spot, leaving the ghetto, leaving the illusion I had built for them. Mr. Henderson picked up the letter from the floor. He read it. He chuckled. Cold-blooded. He said to the empty hallway, "That girl is cold-blooded." He crumpled the letter and tossed it into a trash can. I closed the laptop. The flight attendant appeared at my elbow. Ms. Vance, we are beginning our descent into Paris. The weather is clear. It is a beautiful morning. I looked out the window. The sky was a brilliant blue. The clouds were white and fluffy like cotton. Below me, the city of lights was waking up. Yes, I said. It is a beautiful morning. I took a deep breath. The air in the cabin smelled of fresh coffee and expensive perfume. It did not smell of cabbage. It did not smell of struggle. It smelled of victory. I was done with the past. The demolition crew would handle the rest. I had a meeting on the Champs-Élysées. I had a company to run. I had a life to live. A life that was finally, entirely, completely mine. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime that sounded like a judgment bell. My family stepped out onto the 45th floor of the Omni Tower. They looked like refugees from a failed gala. My mother Beatrice was still wearing her coat from the night before, the fur matted and damp from the morning slush. My father Harold had buttoned his wool coat all the way to his chin, trying to hide the fact that he was still wearing a tuxedo shirt stained with sweat. Darius looked like a ghost walking to his own grave. Tiffany trailed behind them, clutching her designer bag as if it were a life preserver. The reception area was a vast expanse of white marble and glass. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city of Atlanta, spread out below a gray sprawl of concrete and ambition. It was a view reserved for gods and billionaires. A receptionist with hair pulled back so tight it looked painful did not look up from her screen. "Mr. Sterling is expecting you," she said, her voice cool. "Conference room A, down the hall, the glass doors at the end." She did not offer them water. She did not offer to take their coats. They walked down the long corridor, their footsteps echoing on the marble. I watched them from the camera, hidden in the smoke detector. They walked close together, huddled for warmth, huddled for protection against the sterile wealth that surrounded them. They reached the glass doors. Inside sat Mr. Sterling. He was 70 years old, a man who had made his fortune destroying companies and burying secrets. He was wearing a suit that cost more than Darius' car. He sat at the head of a table that was 20 feet long, made of black obsidian. There was no chair for me. My family entered the room. They looked around nervously, waiting for me to jump out, waiting for the punchline. "Sit," Mr. Sterling said without looking up from his papers. They sat. The chairs were low leather, sleek and uncomfortable. They were designed to make the person sitting in them feel small. It was a psychological trick I had learned from a negotiation book I read when I was 19. "Where is Zara?" My father asked, his voice raspy. "We were told she would be here. We need to speak to her directly." Mr. Sterling took off his reading glasses. He folded them slowly. He placed them on the table. "Ms. Vance does not meet with distressed assets," he said. "She has authorized me to handle the liquidation of the Vance family portfolio." Liquidation. My mother squeaked, "We are not a company. We are her parents." Mr. Sterling ignored her. He reached under the table and pulled out 3 thick binders. He placed them on the obsidian surface with a heavy thud. The sound made Darius flinch. "Binder number 1. Mr. Sterling said, placing his hand on the red cover. "This contains the forensic audit of Apex Capital Group." Darius made a small whimpering sound. Mr. Sterling opened the binder. He turned the pages with a deliberate slowness. "It is a fascinating read," he said. "Wire fraud, securities fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. You were quite creative, Darius. You even stole from the church building fund. $200,000 earmarked for a new roof went into a crypto wallet registered in your name." "I did not steal it," Darius stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "I invested it. I was going to pay it back with interest." "The market disagrees," Mr. Sterling said. "The money is gone. And so is the money from the teacher's pension fund you raided, and the money from your parents' retirement." He closed the binder. "The Securities and Exchange Commission has already drafted the indictment. The FBI is currently waiting in the lobby of your office building. The moment you step foot on that property, you will be arrested. The charges carry a mandatory minimum sentence. He looked at Darius. 15 years in federal prison, no parole. Tiffany let out a sob. 15 years, she wailed. My baby will be in high school. Mr. Sterling did not blink. Binder number 2, he said, tapping the black cover. This contains the financial status of Harold and Beatrice Vance. My father sat up straighter, trying to salvage some dignity. I have been a respected businessman in this city for 40 years. I have assets. I have connections. You have nothing. Mr. Sterling corrected him. You signed as guarantor for Darius' bridge loan. You leveraged the house, the cars, the art collection, even your life insurance policy. Mr. Sterling flipped the binder open. Ms. Vance purchased the debt this morning. She owns the note. And since you have missed 3 payments, she has exercised her right to accelerate the loan. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. This is the eviction notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. The locks will be changed tomorrow at noon. Anything left inside becomes the property of the holding company. My mother began to cry. Not the soft weeping she used to manipulate my father, but ugly, jagged sobs. My house. She gasped. My beautiful house. Where will we go? We cannot be homeless. What will people say? Mr. Sterling looked at her with mild distaste. People will say you raised a thief and spent money you did not have. They will say the truth. He sat back in his chair. He tented his fingers. However, he said. The word hung in the air. It was a lifeline. A thin, fraying rope thrown into a dark pit. My family leaned forward. Their eyes were wide, desperate. They looked like starving dogs seeing a bone. However, Mr. Sterling repeated, Ms. Vance is a woman of complications. She does not wish to see her brother in a cage, not because she cares about him, but because a trial would be public. It would be messy. It would drag her name through the mud alongside yours. He pulled the third binder forward. It was white, pristine. Binder number 3, he said. The exit strategy. What is it? My father asked, his voice trembling with hope. Ms. Vance is willing to pay off the debts, Mr. Sterling said. All of them. She will replenish the church fund. She will settle with the investors. She will pay off the mortgage on the house so the foreclosure does not appear on public record. Oh, thank God. My mother breathed, clutching her chest. Thank God. I knew she would not do this to us. I knew she loved us. Mr. Sterling held up a hand. She will do this, he said. If and only if you agree to the terms of this contract. What terms? Darius asked, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Mr. Sterling opened the white binder. Term 1, the relocation. Harold and Beatrice Vance will immediately vacate the property in Buckhead. You will not take anything of value. You will be relocated to a facility in Florida. Sunset Pines. Florida, my father asked. A retirement home. A secure assisted living facility. Mr. Sterling corrected. It is a very nice facility. There is a golf course. There is a pool. But it is a closed campus. You will not have access to liquid capital. Your expenses will be paid directly by the trust. You will receive a small monthly stipend for sundries. You will not be permitted to open new lines of credit. You will not be permitted to start new businesses. You will retire, Harold, effectively and permanently. My father's face turned red. You are putting us in a home. We are in our 60s. We are not invalids. You are financially incompetent, Mr. Sterling said coldly. You have proven you cannot manage your own affairs without defrauding your community. Ms. Vance is ensuring you do not starve. That is more than you did for her. Term 2, he continued. The confession. He looked at Darius. You, Darius, will not go to prison, but you will not walk away clean. What do I have to do? Darius asked. You will unlock your phone, Mr. Sterling said, pointing to the device on the table. You will open your Instagram account. You have 50,000 followers, I believe, a lot of people who look up to you. You will start a live stream, and you will read this statement. Mr. Sterling slid a piece of paper across the obsidian table. I, Darius Vance, admit that I have been running a fraudulent investment scheme. I admit that I stole from my church and my family. I admit that my success was a lie. I am stepping down from all positions and I am entering a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. I apologize to everyone I hurt, especially my sister Zara Vance, who is the only reason I am not in handcuffs today. Darius stared at the paper. His hands were shaking violently. I cannot do that, he whispered. It will ruin me. I will never work in finance again. That is the point, Mr. Sterling said. You are done in finance, Darius. You are a liability. You will read the statement, you will leave it up on your profile, and then you will hand over your phone. You will never have a social media presence again, and if I refuse, then I call the agents in the lobby, Mr. Sterling said simply. And you can explain your investment strategy to a federal judge. 15 years, Darius. Think about it. Darius looked at Tiffany. She was staring at the wall, her face blank. She knew it was over. Term 3. Mr. Sterling said, his voice dropping an octave. The severance. Once these terms are met, you will never contact Zara Vance again. You will not call her. You will not text her. You will not email her. You will not speak her name to the press. You will not mention her to your friends. She does not exist to you. If you violate this term, if you try to reach out, if you try to ask for more money, if you try to sell a story to a tabloid, the deal is void. The debts come back. The charges are filed, and you will be destroyed. Mr. Sterling closed the white binder. Those are the terms. Take it or leave it. The room was silent. The air conditioning hummed. My mother was crying softly. It was a mourning sound. She was mourning her social status. She was mourning her house. She was mourning the illusion she had spent her life building. We have no choice. My father whispered, No, Harold, you do not. Mr. Sterling said. Darius reached for the paper. His hand was heavy as if it were made of lead. He picked up his phone. Do it, Mr. Sterling commanded. Now. I watched on the monitor. Darius unlocked his phone. He opened Instagram. He hit the live button. I saw the notification pop up on my own screen. Darius Vance is live. He held the phone up. His face was puffy, his eyes red. He looked into the camera. Hey everyone, he said, his voice cracking. I have something to say. He read the statement. He stumbled over the words. He cried when he got to the part about stealing from the church. He choked when he said my name, especially my sister Zara Vance, who is the only reason I am not in handcuffs today. He finished reading. He stared at the camera for a second longer. Then he ended the stream. He put the phone on the table and slid it toward Mr. Sterling. It is done, Darius whispered. Mr. Sterling picked up the phone. He dropped it into a metal box under the table. Good. He pushed a stack of documents toward my parents. Sign here, and here, and here. This transfers the deed. This accepts the terms of the trust. This is the non-disclosure agreement. My father took the pen. He signed his name, Harold Vance. The signature was shaky. It looked like the signature of an old man. My mother signed next. She did not look at the paper. She just scribbled her name and dropped the pen. Mr. Sterling gathered the documents. He tapped them on the table to straighten them. Excellent. He stood up. A car is waiting downstairs to take you to the airport. Your flight to Florida leaves in 2 hours. Your bags have already been packed by the movers. Packed, my mother gasped. But my jewelry, my furs, collateral, Mr. Sterling said. Everything of value was seized to pay the interest on the loans you defaulted on. You are leaving with the clothes on your backs and a suitcase of essentials. He walked to the door and held it open. Goodbye. They stood up slowly. They looked like sleepwalkers. They walked out of the conference room. They walked down the long marble hallway. Tiffany lingered for a second. She looked at Mr. Sterling. "What about me?" she asked. "I did not sign anything." Mr. Sterling looked at her with cold amusement. "You are not a Vance," he said. "You are free to go, but I suggest you find a good divorce lawyer. Although Darius has no assets to split, so it should be a quick proceeding." Tiffany looked at Darius retreating back. She looked at her stomach. She made a calculation. She turned and walked toward the elevators. She did not follow the Vances. She pressed the button for the lobby. She was cutting her losses. I watched them go. I sat in the cockpit of my jet, the laptop screen glowing in the dim light. We were descending into Paris. Mr. Sterling looked up at the camera hidden in the smoke detector. He knew I was watching. He nodded once, a small professional nod. It was done. I closed the laptop. The plane wheels touched the tarmac with a gentle bump. I looked out the window at the gray sky of France. I was an orphan now, legally, financially, emotionally. I felt a pang in my chest, a small, sharp ache for the little girl who just wanted her father to look at her with pride. But then I thought about Darius' face as he read that statement. I thought about my mother realizing she had lost her house. The ache faded. I stood up and smoothed my white suit. I grabbed my bag. The door of the jet opened. The cool air of Paris rushed in. It smelled of rain and old stone and possibility. I stepped out onto the stairs. I had a meeting to get to. And for the first time in my life, I was not late. I was right on time. I sat on the balcony of my suite at the Ritz Paris, wrapped in a silk robe that cost more than my brother's annual salary. The Eiffel Tower glittered in the distance, a beacon of iron and light against the night sky. On the table in front of me, my laptop was open. But I was not looking at stock prices or acquisition documents. I was looking at Instagram. Tiffany had gone rogue. Just as Mr. Sterling had predicted, my sister-in-law had refused to sign the non-disclosure agreement. She thought she was smarter than the lawyers. She thought she could win in the court of public opinion what she had lost in the boardroom. She thought her 50,000 followers and her mommy blogger aesthetic would protect her. She was live right now. I tapped the screen to unmute the video. Tiffany's face filled the frame. She was not wearing makeup. Her eyes were red-rimmed. She was sitting in a hotel room that looked decidedly budget, a stark contrast to the mansion she had just been evicted from. She was crying. Or at least she was making the sounds of crying. "I do not know what to do, you guys." Tiffany sobbed into the camera, wiping her nose with a tissue. "We have been blindsided. My husband family. They have been destroyed. And it is all because of his sister, Zara Vance." She paused to let the name sink in, to let her followers search for me. "She is a billionaire now." Tiffany continued, her voice trembling with practiced vulnerability. "She has all the money in the world, and instead of helping her family, instead of helping her brother who is about to be a father, she kicked us out on the street. She took the house, she took the cars, she left us with nothing. I am pregnant, you guys. I am 6 months pregnant, and I do not know where I am going to sleep tonight." Comments were flying up the side of the screen. "That is evil. Eat the rich. How can a sister do that? Stay strong, Mama." Tiffany leaned closer to the camera. "She has always hated me," she whispered. "She hates me because I am not like them, because I am not, you know. She has always made me feel like an outsider, like I was not good enough for their prestigious black family. And now she is punishing Darius just for loving me. It is cruel. It is racism is what it is." I watched the viewer count tick up. 10,000, 20,000. The narrative was taking hold. The internet loved a villain, and a billionaire evicting a pregnant woman was the perfect villain. My phone buzzed. It was Julian. He was in the other room ordering room service, but he was watching too. "Do you see this?" he texted. "The sentiment analysis is turning negative. People are buying it." I typed back. "Let them buy it. It makes the crash more entertaining." I opened a secure folder on my desktop labeled "The Nuclear Football." Inside were the files I had held back. The files I had hoped I would not have to use because they were so ugly, so personal, that they would scorch the earth around anyone who touched them. But Tiffany had declared war, and I did not believe in proportionate responses. I believed in total annihilation. I selected 2 files. File A was the audio recording from the security system in my parents' living room, taken at 11:30 p.m. on New Year Eve, 30 minutes before the ball dropped. File B was a PDF document containing the scanned ledgers from the Mount Zion AME Church Building Fund. I sent them to my crisis management team in New York with a 2-word subject line: release everything. I took a sip of champagne. It was a vintage Krug. It tasted like cold stars. 10 minutes later, the tide turned. It did not turn slowly. It turned with the violence of a tsunami. The audio file hit Twitter first. It was leaked by an anonymous account, but verified by 3 independent audio forensic experts within minutes. The caption was simple: "The real Tiffany Vance." I played the clip on my laptop. Tiffany's voice rang out clear and sharp, devoid of the tears she was currently faking on Instagram. "God, did you smell her? She smells like old fryer grease and desperation. I told Darius if she comes in I am leaving. I do not want my baby absorbing that kind of failure through the womb." Then my mother voice: "We have to love her from a distance." Then Tiffany again, laughing this time. A cruel, high-pitched sound. "It is embarrassing, honestly. Harold is a pillar of the community, and his daughter looks like she sleeps under a bridge. I just hope she does not touch anything. I do not want to catch whatever ghetto disease she picked up living in that slum." The internet reacted instantly. The comments on Tiffany livestream stopped being supportive. They turned vicious. Ghetto disease. Wow, the racism jumped out. She is laughing at her while spending her husband's stolen money. Cancel her. Tiffany saw the comments changing. Confusion crossed her face. Then panic. She tried to ignore them, but they were overwhelming. People were posting links to the audio file in her chat. "What is this?" she stammered. That is out of context. That is edited. I never said that." But she had said it, and everyone knew it. Then the second bomb hit. The Shade Room posted the documents. Exclusive. Reverend Harold Vance and son Darius Vance accused of embezzling $1.2 million from Mount Zion Church Building Fund. Receipts inside. The PDF showed the wire transfers. Money meant for a new community center. Money meant for after-school programs for at-risk youth. Money meant for the elderly. Transferred directly into an offshore account controlled by Darius Vance. Co-signed by Harold Vance. And then the kicker. A credit card statement from that same offshore account showing purchases at Gucci, Louis Vuitton, and a $50,000 charge for a destination wedding in Cabo. Tiffany wedding. The internet detectives connected the dots in seconds. She is crying about being homeless, but she is wearing a wedding ring bought with church money. They stole from the congregation to buy designer bags. This entire family is trash. Zara Vance is a hero for cutting them off. I watched Tiffany's face on the screen. She was reading the comments. She was seeing her world collapse in real time. She tried to end the live stream, but her hands were shaking so hard she dropped the phone. The camera pointed at the ceiling for a moment, catching the sound of her screaming at Darius in the background. "You told me no one would know. You told me the money was safe." Then the feed cut to black. I closed Instagram. I opened the local news feed from Atlanta. It was Sunday morning in Georgia. Church time. The camera crew was already outside Mount Zion AME. It was a historic church, a pillar of the Black community in Atlanta. My father had been a deacon there for 20 years. He walked around that church like he owned it. Today, he was walking into a firing squad. The feed showed a black town car pulling up to the church steps. It was a rental. My father stepped out. He was trying to maintain his dignity. He was wearing his Sunday best, a 3-piece suit, and a fedora. He held his Bible under his arm. He thought he could talk his way out of it. He thought he could stand in the pulpit and preach about forgiveness and the devil testing him. He thought his charisma would save him. He was wrong. A group of deacons was waiting for him at the top of the stairs. They were old men, men who had known him for decades, men who had trusted him. They stood shoulder to shoulder blocking the heavy wooden doors. Elder Robinson, the head deacon, stepped forward. He was a small man, but today he looked 10 feet tall. "Harold," Elder Robinson said. His voice was picked up by the news microphones. "You are not welcome in this house." My father stopped. He tried to smile. It looked like a grimace. "Brother Robinson," he said, "surely we can discuss this in my office. These are just rumors. Malicious lies spread by my estranged daughter." "We have seen the bank records, Harold," Elder Robinson said. "We saw the transfers. You signed them. You stole from God, Harold. You stole from the widows and the orphans. I did not steal." My father sputtered, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "I borrowed. It was an investment. I was going to pay it back tenfold. It was for the glory of the church. It was for a Porsche." A woman shouted from the crowd that had gathered on the sidewalk. "It was for your son gambling habit." The crowd began to murmur. It was an angry sound, a low rumble of betrayal. These were people who had tithed 10% of their meager salaries. People who had given their last dollars to the building fund because Harold Vance told them it was a seed for their future. "You need to leave, Harold," Elder Robinson said. "The board has voted. You are removed from the deaconship. You are removed from the finance committee. And you are removed from the membership roll. Do not come back." My father looked at the doors. He looked at the men who used to be his friends. He looked at the crowd. He saw no mercy. He turned around. He looked old. He looked small. He walked back down the stairs. The cameramen swarmed him, shoving microphones in his face. "Reverend Vance, did you know about your son fraud? Reverend Vance, how much money is left? Reverend Vance, do you have anything to say to your daughter?" My father pushed past them. He got into the rental car. He slammed the door. I watched the car drive away. He was not going to a mansion. He was going to the airport, to the economy seat that Mr. Sterling had booked for him, to the assisted living facility in Florida, where he would spend the rest of his life living on a stipend, controlled by the daughter he had thrown away. I closed the news feed. I picked up my phone. I had one more loose end to tie up. I opened the email app. I found the contact for the influencer agency that represented Tiffany. She was a micro-influencer pushing diet teas and baby clothes. It was her only source of income outside of Darius. I forwarded them the audio clip, the one where she called me ghetto, the one where she mocked my poverty. "Subject: concern regarding your brand ambassador." I hit send. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A reply from the agency. "Dear Ms. Vance, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We have a zero-tolerance policy for hate speech and discriminatory language. We have terminated our contract with Tiffany Vance effective immediately." I smiled. It was complete. Darius was facing prison. My father was exiled from his community. My mother was homeless and social pariah, and Tiffany was canceled, broke, and married to a felon. They had cared about image more than anything. They had sacrificed me on the altar of their reputation. So I had burned their reputation to the ground. Julian walked onto the balcony. He was holding a plate of pastries. "It is done," he said. It wasn't a question. "It is done," I said. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. I thought about the little girl who used to wait by the window for her father to come home, only to be told he was too busy. I thought about the teenager who was told she wasn't smart enough for medical school. I thought about the woman who stood in the snow with a bottle of wine. I felt clean. "I feel like I can finally breathe," I said. Julian put the plate down. He wrapped his arms around me from behind. He rested his chin on my shoulder. "Paris is beautiful this morning," he said. I looked out at the city. The sun was fully up now. The light was golden, hitting the limestone buildings and making them glow. "Yes," I said, "it is. And the best part is," I whispered, "they can never touch me here. They do not even have a passport." Julian laughed. "Let us get breakfast," he said. "Real breakfast. Not noodles." I turned away from the view. I closed my laptop. I left the chaos in Atlanta. I left the wreckage of the Vance family in the digital ether. I walked back into the suite. I was Zara Vance. Billionaire. CEO. Orphan. And for the first time in my life, I was hungry for something other than revenge. The final signatures were dry. The ink had settled into the fibers of the paper, sealing the fate of the Vance family with the permanence of a tombstone engraving. I received the confirmation from Mr. Sterling while I was being driven to the private airfield on the outskirts of Atlanta. He sent a secure message. "It is finished." He included a photo. It was a picture taken from the window of his office. Down on the street, 5 figures were boarding a white shuttle bus. It was not a limousine. It was not a luxury SUV. It was a shuttle bus branded with the logo of Sunset Pines Assisted Living Facility. I zoomed in on the photo. My father Harold was entering the bus first. His shoulders were slumped. The fedora he had worn so proudly to church was gone, replaced by a simple knit cap. He looked small. He looked like exactly what he was, a man who had lost his kingdom and was being sent into exile. My mother Beatrice was pausing at the door of the bus. She was arguing with the driver. I could imagine what she was saying. She was probably demanding to speak to the manager. She was probably insisting that there had been a mistake, that she belonged in first class, not in a group transport with vinyl seats. But the driver just pointed to the seat behind her husband. She had no leverage. She had no audience. She got on the bus. Darius was next. He was not wearing his tracksuit anymore. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt that looked like they had been pulled out of a donation bin. Mr. Sterling had been thorough. The repo men had taken everything. The designer clothes, the watches, the shoes. Darius Vance, the man who used to sneer at my Honda, was leaving Atlanta with a duffel bag of generic clothing and a court order. I thought about the terms of his plea deal. I had been specific with the district attorney. I had agreed to pay full restitution to the victims of his Ponzi scheme, covering the millions he stole. In exchange, the DA agreed to a suspended sentence with probation. But I had added a stipulation, a condition of the restitution payment: community service, 2,000 hours. To be served on the roadside of Interstate 85, the main highway through Atlanta. The highway his fraternity brothers drove down every day to get to their offices. The highway his former investors used to commute. Darius would be out there every morning at 6 a.m., wearing a neon orange vest, holding a trash picker and a plastic bag. He would be picking up the garbage of the city he thought he owned. He would be a spectacle, a living, breathing billboard for what happens when arrogance meets justice. And Tiffany. I looked at the blurry figure trailing behind Darius. She had not left him, not yet. She had realized that a broke husband was better than no husband when you were pregnant and canceled. She got on the bus. She was going to Florida too. Not to the assisted living facility, but to a small rental apartment nearby that the trust would pay for. A 1-bedroom apartment. She would raise the Vance heir in the same square footage I had lived in for 7 years. It was poetic. The bus doors closed. In the photo, the brake lights flared red. They were gone. I closed the image. I did not feel joy. I did not feel sadness. I felt a profound sense of lightness. It was as if gravity had released its hold on me. The invisible strings that had tethered me to their approval, to their abuse, to their drama had been severed. The car pulled onto the tarmac. The Gulfstream G650 was waiting. Its engines were already spooling up a high-pitched whine that sounded like the future. My driver opened the door. "Ms. Vance, we are ready for departure." I stepped out into the cold January air. The wind whipped my hair across my face, but I did not brush it away. It felt clean. It felt real. I walked toward the stairs of the jet. Julian was already at the top waiting for me. He held out a hand. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I needed a moment. Just one last moment on Atlanta soil. I looked back at the skyline. The city where I was born. The city where I was broken. The city where I rebuilt myself. It looked different now. It did not look like a prison. It looked like just a place. A collection of buildings and roads and memories that no longer had the power to hurt me. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the temporary phone I had been using for the last 24 hours. The number was known only to Mr. Sterling and my security team. I pulled it out. The screen showed an unknown number, area code 404, Atlanta. I knew who it was. Mr. Sterling must have given them the number for emergencies. Or maybe Beatrice had charmed it out of a junior associate before she got on the bus. She had a way of extracting information like a tick extracting blood. I stared at the screen. It rang and rang. I could answer. I could hear her one last time. I knew what she would say. She would not apologize. Beatrice Vance did not know how to apologize. She would bargain. She would guilt trip. She would tell me that I was cruel. She would tell me that God would punish me. She would tell me that she loved me in her own twisted way, just to see if she could get me to unlock the bank accounts. She wanted me to engage. She wanted me to fight. Because as long as we were fighting, we were still connected. Hate is a bond just as strong as love. And she was terrified of the indifference. I looked at the phone. It was a piece of glass and metal. It was a portal to a world I had just incinerated. I did not slide the bar to answer. I did not send it to voicemail. I walked over to a trash can secured to the side of the hangar. It was an industrial metal bin. I held the phone over the opening. It was still ringing. The vibration buzzed against my fingertips. It felt like a heartbeat, a dying, frantic heartbeat. "Goodbye, Mom," I whispered. I dropped the phone. It hit the bottom of the metal bin with a hollow clatter. The ringing stopped. Silence. I turned back to the jet. I walked up the stairs. My steps were light. My legs felt strong. I took Julian's hand. He pulled me inside the cabin. The door sealed shut behind us, locking out the cold, locking out the noise, locking out the Vances. The cabin was warm. It smelled of leather and fresh orchids. I sat down in a wide cream-colored seat. I buckled the belt. The pilot voice came over the intercom. "Good morning, Ms. Vance. Mr. Chen, we are cleared for takeoff. Our flight plan is filed. We have a tailwind." He paused. "Destination is Paris-Le Bourget. Unless you have any changes to the itinerary, where are we headed today?" I looked at Julian. He was smiling at me. It was a smile of pure pride. He did not see a billionaire. He did not see a victim. He saw Zara. Just Zara. I looked out the window as the plane began to taxi. The terminal buildings were sliding past. The ground was moving beneath me. I picked up the intercom handset. "Captain," I said. "Yes, Miss Vance." "Paris is fine," I said. "But honestly, it does not matter." I leaned back in the seat. I closed my eyes. "Just take us anywhere," I said. "Anywhere but here, anywhere they are not. Just fly. Copy that, Ms. Vance. Wheels up in 30 seconds. The engines roared. The power pressed me back into the seat. The plane accelerated. Faster and faster. The runway became a blur. And then the bump. The moment of lift. The moment the earth let go. We rose. We pierced the gray clouds that hung over Atlanta. We broke through into the blinding white sunlight above. I opened my eyes. The sky was endless. It was empty. It was mine. I was Zara Vance, and I was finally gone. The most profound lesson from Zara's journey is that your true worth is never defined by those who refuse to see it. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, loyalty, and genuine love. When toxic people, even parents, mistake your silence for weakness and your struggle for failure, you don't need to argue. You just need to succeed. True power lies in independence and the courage to walk away from tables where respect is no longer being served. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is burning a bridge to light your own way forward. You are your own savior. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to find your own peace? Share your story in the comments below and hit subscribe for more tales of ultimate justice.